PS Win. Written by
嘟嘟雪球
Chapter 270. Everything was arranged properly, and the offensive against the 505th Brigade entered the final preparation stage. Everyone began to feel the tense atmosphere, and the training intensity of the Dongfeng Corps increased. But unlike everyone else, Shi Dakai appeared extremely relaxed, which was completely inconsistent with his usual pessimistic tendencies. He just trained and prepared step by step. During the rest time, he even had time to play with Li Bang's sister and check the homework she brought back from school. Chen Chen was also surprised by his performance, but then he thought, they're all veterans, so who cares? The less nervous he was, the more confident they were in this operation. In a sense, this was a good thing. As time went by, the progress of the arsenal was not too fast, but it still met the basic requirements. By the 15th day, the number of modified rockets had reached 3,000, and Chen Chen organized the first test launch, with a terrifying effect. Really terrifying. The little bit of CL-20 that Suyu had stockpiled was finally used, and this explosive had a far greater explosive power than RDX, and it also exerted a powerful force. Due to volume limitations, the BL-1A rocket can only carry a maximum of 180 grams of explosive, which is equivalent to the explosive of only 5 Type 67 grenades. However, judging from the damage to the humanoid targets in the target area, the killing effect of this 180 grams of explosive is at least equivalent to that of 600 grams of TNT. All targets within a radius of 10 meters were swept by the shockwave, and the fragile human-shaped targets were even broken into pieces. Such lethality is no longer comparable to that of ordinary offensive grenades. In addition to the explosives for simple blasting and killing, this batch of 3,000 rockets were mainly filled with incendiary agents including picric acid, thermite, and even white phosphorus in accordance with Chen Chen's requirements. The reason is simple. The warhead of the BL-1A rocket is made of fiberglass, and the damage caused by fragments is extremely limited. If you just load TNT, the explosion damage can only rely on the shockwave, and the killing effect is relatively general. During the subsequent modification work, the people in the arsenal discovered that artificially filling fragments would affect the flight stability of the rocket. So after weighing the pros and cons, Chen Chen finally decided to go back to his old business. Set fire. Set fire. I just wonder if the 505th Brigade will still be able to organize a counterattack when these 3,000-plus rocket missiles really fly over their heads. Perhaps the only way to answer this question is to ask Zhao Jiaoyang in person. Of course, while Chen Chen was making intensive preparations, the 505th Brigade and the Burmese army were also busy. The sanctions had failed, and the deadlock in Jingdong could not be broken, so they immediately came up with new tactics to weaken the power of the coalition forces. That is, psychological tactics. They hyped up the strength of the 505th Brigade and belittled the coalition forces in an attempt to make the coalition soldiers lose confidence. I have to say that this trick is quite useful. After all, most of the militia on the coalition side have not been to school much, and the only criterion for evaluating their combat effectiveness is to see who is more people. For a time, the coalition forces showed signs of morale unrest. But this kind of military unrest soon disappeared without a trace, because another batch of bulletproof vests were distributed. Along with the bulletproof vests came radio communication equipment that these soldiers had never used before. It's not a high-end product, just a walkie-talkie that sells for more than 100 yuan in the north. But the question is, when have these soldiers who serve in the army and eat food ever received such treatment? When the channel of the walkie-talkie was adjusted and they clearly heard the instructions from their squad leader and his reply through the walkie-talkie, the morale of the coalition forces changed abruptly. Because everyone realized that the battle they were about to fight was completely different from the previous gunfights. Can they win? They don't know. But they knew that their superiors really wanted to win. That was enough. As a result, the morale of the army stabilized again. And with the arrival of a large number of rocket launchers, the morale of the coalition forces had reached its peak. They couldn't wait to cut something to test the sharpness of their knife. A restless mood began to spread, and Chen Chen knew that such emotions would be the best help in subsequent operations. The fight is about to begin. At the same time, Dakali, still in that absolutely inconspicuous apartment building, Zhao Jiaoyang sat on the sofa, listening to the report from his adjutant. All the teams are ready, and our morale is high now. The total number of troops that can be mobilized is 4,200, led by 4 regiment commanders. According to the predetermined combat plan, we will simultaneously launch an attack on the Palau defense line. It will take 1 to 2 days to capture Palau, and then join forces with the Myanmar army in Kengtung to launch an attack on the Mongbin defense line in the west. The equipment has been repaired and maintained, and the armored company's total of 11 armored vehicles are ready to go. With the advantage of mobility, we will first defeat Mengbin and disarm the 756th Brigade, then turn around and attack the northern line, break through the Wampai defense line, and finally head to Mengka. The Burmese army will cooperate with our actions. They will launch a full-scale offensive in the Mengxiu area to disperse the forces of the 7th Brigade and create opportunities for us to fight. Overall, our plan is quite robust and can definitely be described as step-by-step. I think the risk of this operation is relatively low. We far outnumber the enemy in terms of both equipment and numbers. If I can't win this, then I really don't know what to say. Hearing the adjutant's words, Zhao Jiaoyang nodded slightly. After a few seconds of silence, he suddenly asked, most of our intelligence network in the Mengkai area has been destroyed. So far, the intelligence we have obtained has been reduced to less than 20% of the original. This is very bad. We have no way of understanding the enemy's movements in real time. I want to confirm whether there have been any new changes on the other side during this period of time. In other words, have they made any moves beyond our expectations? No. The adjutant shook his head and replied, The Dongfeng Corps has imported a large batch of equipment from Myanmar. According to our observation, this batch of equipment is mainly bulletproof vests. Oh, there are a few rockets, but they shouldn't be many. Rockets? Zhao Jiaoyang frowned and continued to ask. How could they get rockets from the north? This doesn't make sense, does it? I also think it's unreasonable. I feel that this should be the result of Wa State's intervention. The north cannot provide rockets to the coalition forces, but Wa State itself has some rockets. They may just be using the name of the north to put pressure on us. In fact, we also used our connections in Myanmar to confirm that there was no record of importing military rockets during this period. In other words, even if they were able to get them, they were most likely smuggled in through some illegal means. The number is definitely not too large. Maybe 1 or 200 rounds? That's the limit. Then there won't be any problem. Zhao Jiaoyang breathed a sigh of relief. 1 or 200 rockets should be enough to destroy a stronghold. However, in a battle between two armies, this number is not even enough to fill the gaps between teeth. It's really a pipe dream to rely on this little equipment to solve the problem of the strength gap between the two sides. Thinking of this, a smile finally appeared on the corner of his mouth. Then he said, "Get ready. 3 days later, we will officially break camp and set off. This year is already halfway over, and Mid-Autumn Festival is coming soon. Tell the people below that we will fight to Northern Shan State and celebrate the Mid-Autumn Festival in Minka. We must take the initiative." 8 o'clock at night, Jingdong South, in the Palau camp. Chen Chen arrived here just 2 hours ago, along with all the members of the Dongfeng Corps who were ready to go. Instead of taking a helicopter, they arranged for all motor vehicles to secretly leave the city. Standing behind him were 24 fully armed mercenaries wearing 4-eye night vision goggles and gas masks, heavy bulletproof vests, and holding various types of cash guns with optical sights. Standing in front of him were He Bongxiong and Zhu Qixing, the commander-in-chief of the Palau defense line. Chen Chen and Zhu Qixing were already familiar with each other. After all, he was the middleman when they first met with the 756th Brigade. There was some unpleasantness between the two at that time, but of course, such unpleasantness disappeared soon after. Zhu Qixing is now just like He Bongxiong. His attitude towards Chen Chen is both warm and respectful, as if he has completely forgotten his determination when he threw the apple into the trash can. Looking at Chen Chen and the 20 or so mercenaries behind him who were quiet, solemn, murderous yet extremely restrained, Zhu Qixing's heartbeat even quickened. However, in front of Chen Chen, he still maintained basic composure. He spread out the battle map on the table in front of him, then pointed to the mark on the battle map and said, "Commander Chen, this is the current situation. The 505th Brigade has already completed its assembly. There are a total of 5 regimental combat units, with a total of about 5,000 people. Now, these 5,000 people are scattered in 3 camps in northern Tachalike. Tachalike Airport Camp, Vesa Camp, Xiaoma Camp. The Tachalai Airport Camp is located in the north, controlling the Tachalai Highway, and the other 2 camps are located on both sides of the Tachalai Airport Camp, forming a protective posture. There are about 2,000 people stationed in the Tachalike Airport Camp, with a large number of heavy weapons and possibly armored vehicles, but I'm not sure. If the 505th Brigade launches an attack on us, this will be their forward departure position. The location is very critical. If we want to stop their attack, we must seize the key points of their maneuvering. You can't catch it." Chen Chen interrupted Zhu Qixing and said, "Now the connection between the two sides has been completely cut off. After the road is blocked, it will be even more difficult for us to grasp the movements in their military camp. Now you don't even know the specific personnel deployment of their various camps. If the situation deteriorates further, it is very likely that you won't even be able to get to the edge of the camp. When did they set out? What route did they take? Where was their destination? What vehicles did they use? What weapons did they have? All this information is inaccessible to us. Once they exert a great effort, we will be completely passive. So, we have to take the initiative. We must take the initiative to attack Dakali and defeat them while they are still in the barracks." "What did you say?" As soon as he finished speaking, Zhu Qixing and He Bongxiong both widened their eyes. "What the hell? Our own military strength is already at a disadvantage. So why do we need to take the initiative to attack? What kind of tactics is this? Isn't this just going to die?" Even He Bongxiong, who had the strongest confidence in Chen Chen, fell into doubt at this time. In his initial expectations, Chen Chen's tactics would definitely be quite radical, but not to this extent. It is completely understandable to consolidate defense and use fortifications and tactics to wear down the enemy's strength. It is also basically feasible to find out the enemy's route of action and take the initiative to attack and ambush, although it is very difficult to use the advantages of firepower and mobility to carry out guerrilla warfare and harassment. It is not impossible to try. But go directly to attack the enemy's lair? Isn't this too crazy? Looking at the serious Chen Chen, He Bongxiong coughed and said, "Brother Chen, our number on the Palau defense line is not large, only less than 2,000. These 2,000 men have to hold off the defenders of Jingdong and face the threat of the 505th Brigade. They are already stretched to the limit. You said you wanted to fight Dakali. What can we use to fight? What if the other side attacks from both sides? If we take out the 505th Brigade, won't there be any risk of being attacked from both sides?" As soon as Chen Chen finished speaking, He Bongxiong's unfinished words were choked in his throat. "Yes, there would be no risk if we killed them. But the question is, can we really kill them? He Bongxiong only has this little money, so he really doesn't dare to take any risks. But then he thought, if he couldn't take the risk himself, it might be okay to let the sunken ship take the risk. Take a gamble." Thinking of this, his expression changed immediately. "Okay, let's hit him. But how?" Chen Chen nodded with satisfaction, and then said, "The fact that you can make this decision shows that you really want to win. If we stay in Palau and defend ourselves, we will inevitably fail. They have more people and more guns. They will wear us down. Only by taking the initiative can you have a chance. After a pause, Chen Chen continued. Our advantages lie in our mobility and heavy firepower. So, there are only a few things we need to do next. First, mobilize the left and right mobile vehicles, transport all rocket launchers, including BL-1A and 63 rockets, and tow all heavy artillery, and head to Tachalike under my command. Second, select 600 veterans and hand over all your private soldiers to me. Then select 50 elite soldiers to follow me along the route and clear the roadblocks on the Tachalike highway. Third, the Palau position will simultaneously launch a harassment attack on Kangtung to create an opportunity for me. Everything must be done quickly. We must be ready within 2 hours and leave within 3 hours. How is it? Is there any difficulty? No difficulty, but isn't this too hasty? Moreover, this will weaken Palau's combat effectiveness by at least 60%. Ibupa's tone was a little hesitant, not just because Chen Chen was going to take away a large number of heavy weapons. As a veteran soldier who had fought on many battlefields, he knew too well the dangers of breaking camp hastily. After all, this time, it is not a few people or dozens of people who need to be mobilized, but hundreds of people. How do you handle logistics? How do you arrange vehicles? How do you set the tactical direction? If he didn't consider anything and just attacked in a mess, wouldn't that expose his weaknesses to the enemy? However, facing his hesitation, Chen Chen shook his head firmly. I know what you're worried about. In fact, this is also my concern. I don't have the ability to command hundreds of people in battle, nor do I have the ability to do any micromanagement. So, I can only choose this option. That is, bring your men and equipment and charge forward regardless of the consequences. Win or lose in one go. Don't worry. We are not well organized, and the enemy is even less organized. Don't think it's complicated, but there is actually only one thing we need to do. That is, set up the rockets and artillery, and then drop all the shells on the enemy's head. Clear. He Bongxiong nodded slightly, and then continued. But it will take time to deploy the position. The range of our rockets is only 2 kilometers at most, and at our current level, we can only conduct direct shooting from high ground. This way, the entire army will be in danger. The enemy's heavy firepower can completely cover us. I have arranged for a helicopter to pick people up in Mingxiu. Chen Chen continued. The anti-artillery radar will be deployed accordingly. We will set up 2 positions. The first position is the bake. As long as the enemy's artillery fires the first shot, our heavy artillery will accurately kill them. Okay, what about the infantry? What if the enemy launches an infantry charge? We will hold them off. Your 50 elite soldiers plus our 20 are enough. 70 people. You're going to hold back nearly 2,000 people? He Bongxiong was stunned. It's impossible that there are 2,000 people. They can only organize a few hundred people to advance the assault. With our 2 armored vehicles, 2 F-150S, and a bunch of machine gun pickups, shouldn't it be easy to defeat a few hundred light infantry? Besides, we are going to fight a night battle. Our helicopter can fly over his head. Hurry up, the opportunity is fleeting. We don't have time to hesitate. Understood? Zhu Qixing. Go and make arrangements immediately. Clear. 2 minutes later, the entire camp was in motion. One by one, military vehicles turned off their lights and stopped at the entrance of the camp. Heavy artillery was hung on trailers, and rocket launchers that had not been unloaded in time were pulled out directly. The 40 launchers were scattered on 3 trucks. 600 people sounds like a lot. But in fact, Chen Chen had no intention of using these 600 people to organize any infantry charge. Their only job was to operate 40 rocket launchers and fire all 3,000 rockets at the Tachalike airport camp. Only 70 people actually entered the camp to launch the attack. And 8 vehicles. Maybe in a helicopter. After the entire camp is disrupted and the camp bombing occurs, the rocket troops, 1 kilometer away, will enter the camp as quickly as possible and plunder the camp at the fastest speed. Take away everything that can be taken away and blow up everything that cannot be taken away. Then, they would inevitably face the pincer attack from the other 2 camps. But it doesn't matter, because Chen Chen doesn't plan to defend it any longer. After doing all this, just run away. You want to chase? That's exactly what I want. If a troop's route of movement is determined, isn't it easy to ambush them? So, in summary, when Chen Chen clearly knew that he was not capable of commanding an unfamiliar team to conduct large-scale combat, he chose the most straightforward approach. A go up, fight in, grab stuff, and run. Even a mercenary of low quality would be able to do such a thing poorly, because all the work that requires tactics and organization is concentrated on those 70 people. Thinking of this, Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief. He walked up to the mercenaries of the Dongfeng Corps and said, "Next, we will most likely face a tough battle. But because it is a night battle and we have advanced equipment, our advantage is enormous. I don't ask you to cause too much casualties, nor do you need to pursue any big results. I have 2 requests of you. First, try not to die. Second, lead Bongxiong's private soldiers well. From now on, each of you is an officer. Do you understand?" Clear. Everyone answered at the same time, and at this moment, Bongxiong's private soldiers also arrived. Their equipment was pretty good. All of them wore heavy bulletproof vests, and many of them had machine guns. Even the Type 81 rifles were brand new. However, in front of the Dongfeng Corps, they were still like bumpkins. After all, the Dongfeng Corps' M240S are already equipped with 4x thermal imaging sights. The private soldiers' eyes were full of envy, but also excitement, because they know that this battle will be difficult, but it will definitely be a thrilling one. As long as they can bear it, everyone can get promoted and make a fortune. In the absence of faith, the cohesion of military spirit sometimes depends on these tangible things. After a brief familiarization, Chen Chen quickly integrated the two teams together. This time, the team was divided into 10-man combat teams. Since the number of private soldiers was slightly larger, there were 8 combat teams in total, with a total of 84 people. Each group will have at least 2 members of the Dongfeng Corps, who will serve as command, firepower center, and reconnaissance roles. The personnel were ready, and soon all the equipment was in place. It has to be said that the 600 veterans selected by He Bangxiong are quite reliable. They have fully understood their tasks and their current situation. Everyone was on board, and the total number of vehicles reached 80. A lot. Not because so many are needed to accommodate them, but because He Bangxiong spent all his money to arrange enough margin for this team. Even if some vehicles were damaged in subsequent combat, as long as the entire army was not wiped out, this team would not be held up by the 505th Brigade. Very cautious, but also very bold. Chen Chen cast an approving look at He Bangxiong, who nodded solemnly and said, "Brother, we are ready. Do you want to have a drink to say farewell? No need for all that fancy stuff." Chen Chen shook his head and continued, "We are 130 kilometers away from Dakali in a straight line and 160 kilometers by road. It's 11:10 now. We have to reach the designated combat location within 4 hours, and then spend another hour deploying the team. We must launch the attack on time at 4 o'clock. Time is very tight, and we can't waste any time." Everyone set off immediately. The command has been handed over to Chen Chen. There is no need for He Bangxiong to confirm again. All vehicles start immediately. The lights came on, and a long winding dragon began to extend southward along the Tachalike Highway. The speed of the long dragon gradually increased, and ahead of them, there were several armed vehicles leading the way. According to the preliminary intelligence, Zhao Jiaoyang made a serious mistake. He probably never thought that the coalition forces would mobilize troops to actively attack Dakali, so his control over the Dakali Highway, the main traffic artery, was all exposed. He set up several checkpoints, each of which was manned by dozens or even hundreds of heavy troops. Of course, he also set up secret sentries for reconnaissance and built an intelligence network. However, he did not even set up an ambush camp. This turned this assault into a pure speed race. The most core point of contention is Mayan village on the north side of the Dakali airport camp. As long as the Dongfeng Corps takes this place first, then all subsequent plans can proceed smoothly. The convoy had been moving for more than 2 hours and only had 10 minutes left to go to the first checkpoint. Chen Chen picked up the walkie-talkie and began to issue detailed combat orders. "We have a total of 5 checkpoints that need to be breached, all of which are settlements along the Tachalike Highway. Yaxin, Kemu, Aijiao Village, Xiaoping Village, and finally Mayan. The distance between each checkpoint is about 3 to 5 kilometers, and the total length of the defense zone is 12 kilometers. Among them, Mayan is the most critical checkpoint. The 505th Brigade has deployed heavy troops there, about 100 people, and heavy weapons. We must reach Mayan Village before the Dakali airport camp reacts, and deploy artillery and rocket positions on 2 flat high grounds on the west side of Mayan. The enemy support will be very fast. They will be able to organize a defense in half an hour at most. So this means that the time we take down each checkpoint cannot exceed 3 minutes. The first 3 are easy, but starting from Xiaopeng, the difficulty will increase sharply. Based on this situation, our plan is very simple. The assault team has a total of 12 vehicles. Every time we take down a checkpoint, we will leave 2 vehicles behind to defend and clean up, waiting for the follow-up troops to pass through. Then, after the main force passes, the assault group vehicles will chase forward, merge with other assault group vehicles, and gather all firepower to launch a rapid strike after arriving at Xiaoping. After defeating Mayan, we must continue to advance forward, blocking the only way between the Dakali airport camp and Mayan village, delaying the enemy coming to support, and buying time for the follow-up troops to deploy. We have to hold on for at least 20 minutes. No matter how difficult it is, we have to hold on to them. This is the combat mission. Is that clear? Clear. Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief when he heard responses from various groups over the radio. At this time, the vanguard vehicle of the assault team, the Mengsher that Chen Chen was riding in, had reached the edge of Yaxin village. Chen Chen saw the lights lit up in the distance, so he immediately ordered all vehicles to stop, shorten the distance between vehicles, and prepare to launch a raid. The helicopter that was headed to Mengxiu to pick up the people had already arrived above the convoy. Bao Qi on the helicopter activated the listening radio and used high-power communications to occupy all the enemy's communication channels. However, this action was actually somewhat redundant because the 505th Brigade had not made any unusual movements along the way. Obviously, the sentry posts arranged by Zhao Jiaoyang did not play their due role, and they still knew nothing about the attack launched by the coalition forces. This is good news, but such an advantage will not last long. As long as the battle starts at the first checkpoint, Zhao Jiaoyang will immediately obtain intelligence and make preparations no matter what. It has to be fast, so fast that even if he notices it, he won't have time to react. Chen Chen confirmed the readiness of the entire assault team one last time, and then the drone was released and began to head towards Yaxin village. The real-time image immediately appeared on the screen. With the help of active infrared imaging, the enemy's personnel and firepower deployment were clearly visible. They were still patrolling and guarding leisurely and in an orderly manner. But at this time, Chen Chen had already got back into the car and was ready to launch a raid. The roar of the engine suddenly sounded, and 12 armed vehicles moved forward at full speed. In just 2 minutes, the convoy had covered a distance of 2 kilometers and suddenly appeared in front of the Yaxin checkpoint. Following the guidance of the drone, Chen Chen made quick deployment. Machine gun pickup trucks moved forward, changed formation, and suppressed the firepower points near the checkpoints. F-150, fire a 12-round round to kill the enemy in the bunker. Get out of vehicle number 11 and number 12, set up the fuel air rocket launcher, and shoot down the enemies in the bunker. Team 8 took down the bunker and advanced, mopping up the enemy stragglers and clearing the roadblocks for the convoy. White Dog, monitor the drone footage and provide real-time information to Group 8. Clear. Everyone responded again, and with the unique advantage of air reconnaissance, this assault went extremely smoothly. After just one round of fire suppression, more than 30 enemies at the checkpoint were defeated. Then, the assault team's convoy rushed past and began to clear out the enemies who tried to resist along the line. The warrior vehicle did not open fire at all. Only the 12.7mm machine gun on the Paramount Marauder fired continuously. The fleeing enemies were knocked down one by one, and they couldn't even launch the most basic counterattack. After entering the checkpoint, Paramount and Mengsure exchanged positions, and as a mine-resistant and ambush-proof vehicle, it once again played a role. The weak minefield was rushed through and explosions occurred everywhere, but the car did not suffer any damage at all. The only moment it slowed down was when it was waiting for the 8 groups of members to clear the roadblocks. Only 1 minute had passed, and the assault team had completely passed through the Yashin checkpoint. Behind them, the 2 remaining machine gun pickups had already begun to clean up this small village in coordination with the infantry advancing on foot. All the enemies had nowhere to hide. They didn't even have time to run into the building before they were caught and named one by one. The resistance collapsed quickly, and people kept dropping their weapons and kneeling down to surrender, but they ruthlessly sent bullets into the bodies of every fighter who had once taken up a weapon. It was a raid, but more like a one-sided massacre. The battle had just begun, but the pace had already been stretched to the limit in an instant. Everyone's hands became warm, and the effect of the adrenaline rush surpassed all other drugs. For minutes later, the entire Yashin camp was completely cleared, and at this time, the assault team's 10 vehicles had arrived at the second checkpoint. The drone began to rush to the next battlefield. The 9-kilometer remote control distance completely covered the entire front line. The same scene happened again. Suppression, blasting, clearing the way, and clearing. The number of personnel at the Cam Village checkpoint was greater than that at Yashin Village, but the Dongfeng Corps spent less time. The instructions on the radio became more and more frequent, but in this high-intensity command, Chen Chen remained as calm as if he was strolling in a garden. Groups 9 and 10 stay behind to provide cover. Groups 11 and 12 catch up with the forwards. Understood. Moving forward. Group 6 reports that a small group of enemy support forces have been spotted, requesting active interception on the flank. Interception allowed. 30 seconds. Understood. 30 seconds. Team 7 has found a fleeing enemy force and is dealing with it. Don't waste too much time. Don't chase. Understood. Return to the team immediately. Team 1 has spotted enemy reinforcements from Post 3, numbering around 50. Group 4 support us and defeat them. A series of orders were issued, and in just 2 minutes, the remaining 8 vehicles in the convoy had rushed through the Cam camp and raided the Aijiao village. After defeating the support from Aijiao village at checkpoint number 3, the team's progress finally encountered the first obstacle. It's not that we can't get through, but because of roadblocks. The defenders of Aijiao village finally learned their lesson. They no longer intercepted the assault convoy head-on, but instead tried to completely block the entire road with a large number of vehicles. If they wanted to pass through, the Dongfeng Corps would either have to enter the residential area and take a small road or drive into the farmland on both sides of Aijiao village. No matter which option is adopted, the speed of the assault will be seriously slowed down and the risks will be greatly increased. However, Chen Chen had already prepared for the situation of large-scale roadblocks. Nonsense, the 505th Brigade is not stupid. No matter how stupid they are, they can't even think of the trick of blocking the road with useless cars, right? I won't fight you, I'll just throw the roadblock in front of you. What can you do? Take a detour? Go ahead. The further they go around, the more time the troops behind them have to prepare. This strategy is really rogue and invincible, but the problem is that Chen Chen didn't plan to take a detour at all. What are helicopters used for? They are used for suppression. While the roadblock was not yet fully formed, Chen Chen decisively gave the order. Firebird rockets blow. Artillery coordination. Clear the way for me. Clear. Cheng Lei's calm voice rang in Chen Chen's ears. And then the helicopter on standby, in the air, finally launched a raid. Airborne rockets swept the ground, and the entire Dakali highway was instantly engulfed in flames. And in this sea of fire, 8 assault vehicles rushed past. In front of them, there was flames caused by continuous explosions. Behind them was the charred wreckage. The clever defenders of Aijiao village paid the price. The time they blocked the Dongfeng Corps was even shorter than the previous 2 checkpoints. 10 minutes have passed since the attack was launched. The assault team of the Dongfeng Corps has already crossed a distance of 8 kilometers. Such a speed is amazing even in an ordinary convoy maneuver, and they fought all the way here. The 4th checkpoint was in sight, and the enemy was on high alert. Chen Chen did not pursue speed anymore, but waited for the drone to fly back and conduct high-altitude reconnaissance ahead. The enemy's firepower deployment is clearly visible, including recoilless guns, M56 mountain cannons, rocket launchers, and heavy machine guns. This can almost be said to be an indestructible line of defense, but the prerequisite is that they have to see people. Chen Chen took a deep breath and issued a new order. Stop the convoy and adjust your position to meet me. At a distance of 1 kilometer, the drone will guide the heavy machine guns to conduct overtaking fire, and all automatic grenades will open fire to carry out covering strikes. Use the visible billboard as the direction parameter. Adjust the height and low density to 1,100 meters, and open fire at full force. Clear. Chen Chen used the simplest and most direct reference method of shooting. Considering the current battle situation and the level of his team, this was undoubtedly the simplest and most effective solution. All vehicles opened fire, and grenades and 12.7mm bullets fell like hail. From the drone's perspective, sparks exploded one after another on the enemy's defense line. Based on the grenade landing point information sent back by the drone, Chen Chen kept reporting parameters and made precise adjustments to the shooting angle. The enemy troops hiding behind the bunkers of civilian houses suffered a lot. They didn't even know from which direction the attack came. In just 30 seconds, more than 200 grenades fell, and the 2 anti-aircraft guns on the roof were also destroyed. Then, the Mi-171sh launched a low-altitude raid and carried out the final cleanup of the enemy at the number 4 Xiaoping village checkpoint. The resistance had completely collapsed, and at this time, the 4 machine gun pickups that had originally stayed at checkpoints number 1 and number 2 had completed the task of accommodating the large force to pass through and rejoin the vanguard, bringing the number of vehicles in the convoy back to 10. The firepower was replenished again, and Chen Chen led the team through Xiaoping village without hesitation. After leaving 2 pickup trucks to carry out the cleanup, all members rushed to Mayan village 3 kilometers away. This is the last stronghold and also the most critical one. The difficulty of taking it down is greater than the previous 4 strongholds combined. However, Chen Chen is no longer in a hurry, because 11 kilometers away, the heavy artillery company had already completed its deployment. 6 heavy artillery pieces have been set up. Under the command of Bao Qi, who had already completed the rappelling, all the heavy artillery guns had locked onto the enemy in Mayan village. Destroy the anti-aircraft firepower first to create opportunities for the helicopter to drop bombs. Understood. Scale 80, base firing direction, 45 mils to the left, 1 salvo to load, fire. Boom! The roar of the salvos spread throughout the sky of Dakali. A moment later, several shells fell, landing not very accurately on the first air defense position in Mayan village. Obviously, Bao Qi did not have high hopes for the accuracy of the artillery fire, so he did not try to use multiple guns and multiple firing directions, but directly used a salvo-type covering strike to destroy the enemy's firepower to the greatest extent. His choice was very effective. After the first round of shooting, the first anti-aircraft position was silenced before it could even fire. The enemy reacted instantly and began trying to divert several anti-aircraft guns. But it's too late. The second round of shelling arrived as expected, and it was another complete destruction. At this time, the helicopter had advanced to a distance of less than 1 kilometer under the cover of ground artillery fire. For an experienced and highly skilled pilot like Cheng Lei, this distance is the distance between life and death. The Firebird has reached the target airspace and has visually spotted the enemy fortress. It is now ready to drop bombs. Bombing is allowed. At the command, the simple padlock designed by Cheng Lei himself was immediately released. Afterwards, the captured 250 kilograms bomb fell down and hit the tallest commercial building in Mayan village. This should have been an impenetrable checkpoint. It had a perfect orientation, numerous shelters, a wide firing range, and an incredibly solid steel concrete structure. However, it could not withstand a 250 kilograms bomb. After the violent explosion, the 6-story building collapsed instantly. This also means that there are only a few minutes left before the Mayan village outpost is completely captured. Number 1. Direct the artillery fire to extend and cut off the enemy's retreat. Firebird. Establish air superiority and find and destroy the remaining air defenses. White Dog. Indicate the key targets, direct the howitzers to fire, and destroy the large-scale enemies. Other members of the assault team. Clean up along the road and throw smoke bombs on both sides of the road to block the enemy's firing range. Groups 1, 2, 3, and 4 continue to follow me to the Tachalike airport camp. Everyone else, follow quickly after completing your current mission. Clear. Gunshots rang out. 10 minutes later, the entire Mayan armed forces were almost wiped out. Resistance was almost non-existent, with heavy artillery, aerial bombs, and rockets dropped from the air. The densely falling grenades, the heavy machine guns sweeping everywhere, the iron warriors wearing heavy armor who could not be killed even if they were hit by bullets. Where had the 505th Brigade militia, who had enjoyed peace for a long time, seen such a scene? They didn't dare to think about what kind of enemy they were facing. There was only one thought in their minds. Run! Chaos, complete chaos. All the people who originally lived here fled in panic, or rather, they were actually forced away by the Dongfeng Corps using guns and artillery. This is cruel and even a little inhumane. However, Chen Chen couldn't care less, because he knew that any hesitation on the battlefield could bring about a catastrophic disaster. If we drive all the people away, they still have a chance to survive. Can we let them stay in Mayan? The artillery fire of the 505th Brigade will not care about the lives of you civilians. Run out, and you will survive. 25 minutes had passed when the rocket force arrived in Mayan and began to build rocket artillery positions. Anti-artillery radar was deployed, and lights were flashing on position number 1, which served as a false target, with more than a dozen empty vehicles assembled there. They will be destroyed, but that's what it's worth. Chen Chen didn't have time to take care of things in the rear. In the direction of Dakali, the first support force of the 505th Brigade has been gathering. The distance was less than 2 kilometers, and it would only take them 5 minutes at most to reach the rocket position of the Dongfeng Corps. But they couldn't leave, because 20 minutes after the battle began, the vanguard of the Dongfeng Corps assault team had arrived near the Dakali airport camp. Fast, extremely fast. They don't care about anything, and everything they do is just for this opportunity. An opportunity to disrupt the enemy's assembly process. The assault team had already used up 3/4 of their ammunition, and they had to use this last quarter to completely disrupt the enemy's rhythm and buy 15 minutes for the 40 rockets. 80 versus 2,000. Can't fight. So Chen Chen didn't fight at all. What he has to do now, and what he has to do in 15 minutes is actually the same. That is, throw something explosive at the enemy's head. In fact, Chen Chen's choice was not impulsive, nor was it reckless and without consideration. On the contrary, it was the only and most effective means. Back to the current situation. How can 80 people hold back a team of nearly 2,000 people with a large number of heavy weapons, a large number of vehicles, even more than 10 armored vehicles, and enough anti-aircraft artillery? This is a nearly unsolvable problem, because no matter what tactics you use, the opponent can always find a way to restrain you. Armored vehicle assault? The enemy's armored vehicles are stronger than yours. They even have self-propelled artillery and wheeled assault guns. Helicopter air raid? Their anti-aircraft guns and portable anti-aircraft missiles are not just for show. Position blocking? The number of people on the opposite side is greater than yours, and the area you can control with firepower is limited. Even if they ignore you and go around you directly, you will have no way to deal with it. After all, once you get to the vicinity of Dakali, there is more than one road. The skirmish line of the Iron Tribe battle was used to contain the enemy. After all, the Dongfeng Corps was not that team, so there was no chance that this tactic would be implemented. What's more, Chen Chen didn't want to let these people die. After all, they were all trained by him personally. He would be heartbroken even if one of them died. Therefore, from a third-party perspective, it was actually completely impossible for Chen Chen to hold back these hundreds of people, but since he wanted to do this, he must have thought about how to do it. And the answer is what he is doing now. That is, don't let the battle happen at all. Sitting in the Mengsure vehicle, Chen Chen continued to give his orders. All vehicles, attention. The automatic howitzers have used up all their ammunition. Number 1. Guide the artillery group to bombard the key targets in the Dakali camp. Fire continuously. 63 guns also fires synchronously. At the same time, we need to invade the other party's communication channel and find a way to interfere with their commands. Even if it can only delay them for a minute, it will be enough. Firebird, get out of the air defense range of the airport camp. Don't worry about accuracy. Use the mountains and buildings near Mayan for cover and fire all your rockets. We don't need to pursue killing. We just want to mess them up. Number 3. Contact Bupa and ask him to launch an attack in Mingxiu according to the predetermined plan. Contact Bangxiong. Palau has begun its attack. Oh, and ask him to call the Burmese army to inform them. We need to use up all emergency resources to make it difficult for Zhao Jiaoyang to understand the situation. Even if Lao Mian just called him and delayed him for 30 seconds, we still made money. Clear. Everyone responded immediately, and the entire convoy of 12 armed vehicles regrouped and immediately began to move. The Mengsure and F-150 attacked first, and the automatic howitzers fired crazily, bombarding the camp, which was close to the maximum range of 1,500 meters. They really don't care about accuracy. As long as they can fire the shells, they win. At the same time, Chung Lei also started the action driving the Mi-171SH. In fact, the total number of rockets carried by this helicopter is 108, but so far, it has only fired about 40 rockets. Chung Lei planned to fire all the remaining 68 rockets into the camp. Compared with the automatic howitzer's range of more than 1,000 meters, the C-5 rocket, although small and pitiful, can also hit a range of about 4,000 meters. With the help of the fire control radar, Chung Lei fought with ease. He kept changing positions to avoid the anti-aircraft fire coming from the camp, although in fact, such fire was not dense at all. Then, the rear artillery group commanded by Bao Qi also began to fire. The earth-shaking sound of the 155mm howitzer even silenced the entire battlefield for a moment, and the unique whistling sound of the Type 63 rocket launcher suddenly sounded like an interlude in a symphony. The enemy also began to fight back, and their shells were fired at the fake targets that had been set up long ago. This did not bring them any victory, but instead exposed the location of their deeply hidden artillery array under the monitoring of anti-artillery radar. After all the calculations were completed, Bao Qi immediately instructed the artillery to adjust the positions. Only 2 minutes later, or in fact, it should be said that it was a full 2 minutes later, did our counterattack complete. But for Pu Bei, this speed was already astonishingly fast. Fires lit up in the camp, and small-scale martyrdom explosions occurred. This round of shelling didn't do much damage, but it did cause enough confusion. The soldiers of the 505th Brigade who had gathered at the entrance of the camp and were ready to set off all dispersed. They might have to wait another 10 minutes before they could reorganize themselves. Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief. He knew that at this point, everything was over. At the same time, in the Tachalike airport camp, the adjutant stationed here, Zhao Yuquan, stood by the phone, checking the battle map while calmly reporting to Zhao Jiaoyang on the other end of the phone. Yes, we were attacked. It's not a big problem. We have completed the preliminary investigation. The enemy only has a few hundred people in total. Yes, they used a quick assault to defeat our checkpoints, and now all the outer checkpoints have been lost. Yes, we were too careless before, but it doesn't matter. They are too few in number and can't cause any trouble. We have completed the assembly. Are we ready to attack? Zhao Yuquan asked this question to his adjutant, who just shook his head and made the number 5. That it will take another 5 minutes. We were already assembled, but we were harassed. What? What harassment? What weapon? Zhao Yuquan was puzzled. He didn't know why Zhao Jiaoyang asked this. What weapons make a difference? Aren't they just the same things? Time was short, and he didn't want to argue with Zhao Jiaoyang, so he quickly replied, howitzers, heavy artillery, and a small number of rockets fired by helicopters, and a small number of Type 63 rockets. There aren't that many of them. They are here just to annoy us. They want to buy time for the large force behind them. They want to set up camp in the Mayan area and fight a positional battle with us. We have already launched a round of artillery fire on their camp, which has had a good effect, with a large number of vehicles on fire. Don't worry, the fight is very intense. It is very intense. But our losses were not great. We should say they were very small. They were just firing randomly from a distance of more than 1,000 meters. Except for the heavy artillery, the other shells didn't hit the right place at all. Okay, I'm ready to start organizing the attack. That's it. Zhao Yuquan hung up the phone with a bang. He knew that at this moment when the opportunity was fleeting, there was no need for him to talk too much with Zhao Jiaoyong, the commander-in-chief. He looked at his watch and saw that only 15 minutes had passed since their camp was harassed. The enemy's harassment has stopped for some time, and our team has completed preparations for departure. Moreover, the support troops coming from the two camps on the side are already on the way. Together with the 1st and 2nd regiments of the airport camp, they will launch a counterattack against the enemy like a lion fighting a rabbit. And this counterattack will crush all those enemies who overestimate their own strength. Yes, you guys are great at assaults and your special operations capabilities are amazing. You have advanced equipment and even more advanced technology. But eventually your ammunition will run out. After you run out of grenades, what else can you do? You can't really think that you can defeat us with a few advanced rifles, night vision goggles, and bulletproof vests, right? This is war, not playing house. In a real war, in a real confrontation between two armies, what use will you special forces be? The artillery company is conducting a covering strike, target, Mayan village and local positions in Mayan village. The armored company will make a detour and outflanking move. Don't worry about the infantry. Use your mobility to attack from the flank. The infantry will advance in dispersed units, advancing step by step in squad and platoon units. Be careful not to collide with their commando team. They're the main force of the Dongfang Corps. Even if the light infantry go up there, it will be useless. Just go around them, and then fight them if they chase you. Zhao Quan gave the order to his adjutant, who replied loudly, "Understood. We can set off now. Please allow me to set off. Permission to depart." Zhao Yuquan answered in a high-spirited manner. Then he strode out of the command post and looked at the fire on the distant hilltop. That's where the enemy is. But soon, they would be gone. However, at this moment, Zhao Yuquan suddenly discovered that sparks were rising one by one on the top of the mountain. At first he thought they were sparks from the explosion, but soon he discovered that the sparks were getting bigger. That's not Mars, that's a rocket. Fuck, here we go again. Zhao Yuquan immediately returned to the command post, intending to avoid this round of rocket attacks. He was not worried about the casualties from a saturation rocket strike, because the airport camp was very large. No matter how powerful your Dongfang Corps is, how many rockets can you pull out? 100? 200? A little more? How about 500? With 500 rockets, you can hit something, but that's all. Boom! Boom! The first rocket landed in the camp, and the first wave of dense explosions occurred. Zhao Yuquan took a deep breath and gave the order again. All units seek cover and hide. Armored units move out first to reduce damage from the explosion. Clear! The adjutant answered again. At this time, he had the same idea as Zhao Yuquan. Isn't it just a rocket saturation strike? Just get through it. But they were all wrong, because the Dongfang Corps does not have just a few hundred rockets. It's 3,000 rounds, 3,200 rounds to be exact. 40 launchers, launching in stages, 10 launchers each time, 80 rounds each time. 15 seconds to fire, 1 minute to reload. This time the rocket bombardment lasted for a full 600 seconds. 10 minutes. Coupled with the continuous bombardment of heavy artillery and other sporadic mortar and 63 fire, almost every inch of the entire airport camp has been covered by artillery fire. Picric acid, white phosphorus, and even thermite. The camp was burning madly, and suicide bombings occurred everywhere. When Zhao Yuquan wanted to escape, it was too late. It's a sea of fire. How can a boat float across? The entire camp collapsed completely. The other two teams that came to support also stayed in the distance, shrinking back. They wanted to save them, but how? Who knows when the rain of fire from the rockets will stop? It can last for 10 minutes, but what if it lasts for an hour? For a moment, the battlefield fell into an eerie silence. Apart from the incessant sounds of explosions, all that was left was the howling of burning flames and the wailing of the wounded. In the darkness, the scene was like purgatory. Standing at the highest point of the position, Chen watched the scene in silence. He said, "I thought it would be the Battle of Dakalijalu. I didn't expect this to be the Pubay version of the Fallujah siege." After a round of rocket attacks, the Dakali airport camp completely collapsed. Chen Chen didn't know who the commander of this camp was, but he knew that after this disbandment, it would be very difficult to rebuild the entire camp. The fire was so big and the damage was so thorough that Chen Chen's original plan of rushing into the camp to rob people could not be carried out. The two teams coming to support were also in sight. They were frightened by the 2 rounds of rockets falling in their direction, and their pace of advancement slowed down. But as the dust settled, they finally started to advance again. It's too late. There's nothing left to grab. Let's retreat. Chen Chen spoke decisively. Yes, he is very greedy, to the extent that he would pluck the feathers of passing geese, and even a dog would have 2 teeth pulled out if it looked at him. However, he also knows when to be greedy and when to be timid. The purpose of this raid was to destroy the 505th Brigade's manpower, weaken their strength, and delay their attack on Palau's defense line. And now, the goal has been fully achieved and even better than expected. So what reason do I have to pursue spoils and benefits that are icing on the cake? Armored vehicles are tempting. Heavy artillery is tempting. Unburned shells and supplies are tempting. But no matter how tempting these things are, they are not more important than life. Running away immediately is the best and only option. Therefore, there is only one problem left before Chen Chen. That is, how to run. After all, retreat is the riskiest of all battles. If not handled properly, the so-called evacuation can easily turn into defeat, and the consequences of defeat are absolutely unbearable for any team. The enemy is right in front of us, and our side is almost run out of ammunition. Even the heavy artillery shells have been used up. If we want to stop the enemy's pursuit, we can only rely on light weapons. It was another desperate situation. During this attack, Chen Chen didn't know how many times he had faced such a desperate situation. However, finding a way out of desperate situations happens to be his forte. After a little thought, he opened his mouth and gave the order. Everyone, abandon all baggage and equipment. Don't worry about anything. Get in your cars and run back. There will be no obstacles or battles along the way, so run boldly. Number 1. Lead the artillery first, the Firebirds provide cover, and evacuate at full speed. Don't try to stop the main force. Run away now while they are still confused. The assault team will cover the rear, lay mines along the way, blow up buildings and bridges, and stop the enemy's pursuit at all costs. Clear. Everyone responded over the radio, and then all 600 mercenaries at the rocket launcher position started moving. The vehicle had already been started, and the personnel had already assembled. At Chen Chen's command, everyone began to board the vehicle according to their instinct. There is no need for any organization at all, because the orders Chen Chen gives them are always the simplest. Fight is fight, run is run, no need for any fancy tricks. In just 3 minutes, 600 people had got into 60 cars, and as the first car started to set off, the speed of the convoy immediately increased. Don't worry about the formation, just step on the accelerator as hard as you can. The road is so wide, just don't drive into the ditch. After saying that, Chen Chen got into the Mengshi car and turned around and drove towards Myanmar. At this time, the militia of the 505th Brigade from the 2 camps on the side of Dakali Airport also began to speed up. Several armored vehicles that were not damaged in the rocket bombardment circled towards Chen Chen, as if they wanted to intercept the Dongfeng Corps commandos that were disconnected from the main force. But their armored units are mainly composed of wheeled assault guns. No matter how fast you are, can you be faster than my Warrior, faster than my Rhino Predator, faster than my Hilux pickup truck? Before the armored vehicles of the 505th Brigade even approached, the Dongfeng Corps commandos had already rushed past and left in a cloud of dust. The enemy fired several shots, but really didn't even touch a hair of the Dongfeng Corps. Looking at the armored vehicles still chasing, Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief. Now he had no means to stop the enemy's attack because all the heavy firepower had been used up. So we can't stop. If we stop and get bitten, we'll die. In just a few minutes, the offense and defense have changed. That night, the speed of transition between offense and defense was too fast. It took the Dongfeng Corps less than an hour to penetrate all the checkpoints in Dakali and use unreasonable rocket bombing to kill a camp of 2,000 people. Then, when the soldiers of the 505th Brigade thought that it would be a tough battle, they turned around and ran away. Are you kidding me? Is this how you fight a war? Can you be reasonable? You just run away after shooting without giving any explanation? Under such circumstances, the command of the entire 505th Brigade fell into chaos. Zhao Jiaoyang, who was at a higher perspective, already knew about the fighting near Jingdong and Mingxiu. He certainly knew that the commando team led by the Dongfeng Corps could not have any more cards up their sleeves, so he decisively ordered a full-speed pursuit. But the problem is that the frontline commanders were really frightened by the high-intensity firepower. They have fought wars all their lives, but they have only seen such scenes of densely packed fire covering the entire sky, like a real rain of fire, in movies and on TV programs in the north. It is impossible for them not to worry about the enemy's next moves. After all, in their opinion, if they can bomb once, they can bomb a second time. Therefore, they had to observe and wait. Even though the commander-in-chief's orders could not be disobeyed, it would be okay to delay for a few minutes, right? Even if it was only 5 minutes, the enemy would have to pack up their equipment anyway, so they didn't mind taking this little time. It would be enough to figure out the enemy's true purpose and then pursue them along the route, right? However, these 5 minutes were enough to decide everything, because it took only 4 minutes for the 600-man force to withdraw from Myanmar, and at this time, the pursuers of the 505th Brigade were still nearly 1 kilometer away from them. Under the condition of high-speed maneuvering, they could not launch any fire suppression, and a multi-vehicle rally along the Dakali Highway began. Logically speaking, the pursuers of the 505th Brigade had the advantage because they still had half an armored company to cover them. As long as they got within 500 meters, they could effectively hinder the evacuating troops. But the problem is that Chen Chen is not stupid. The reason why the commandos had to cover the rear was to buy a few minutes, or even just a few tens of seconds for the main force. They bombed their way through, and the sea for that had been prepared long ago played a role. As the last link of the team, they blew up bridges, destroyed roads, and even found time to carry out several directional explosions on roadside billboards, large trees, and fragile high-rise buildings, using the wreckage to block the enemy's pursuit. Every explosion created by the commandos would create a distance of tens of seconds between the main force and the pursuers. When the team left the last checkpoint, the Yashin checkpoint, the original 1 kilometer distance between the enemy and us had widened to nearly 3 kilometers. The enemy was still in camp, clearing the billboards that had been blown down on the roadside by the commandos. Our main force had already entered the highway, and at this point there was actually no need to chase them. However, Zhao Jiaoyang had obviously gone crazy. He still ordered the team to continue the pursuit and even issued a death order, requiring the 3rd and 4th regiments to keep up at all costs. Even if they could not defeat the main force, at least they had to leave the assault team behind. This extremely stupid order was not adopted by the frontline commanders at all, because compared to Zhao Jiaoyang, they could feel the danger of this pursuit more. The 2 commanders tacitly commanded the troops to stop at the Yashin outpost, relying on the favorable terrain to deploy defense and guard against a possible counterattack by the Dongfeng Corps. Under such circumstances, Zhao Jiaoyang went completely insane that he bypassed the two frontline commanders and issued orders directly to the armored company. The four armored vehicles continued to move forward at their maximum speed of 60 kilometers, regardless of the orders of the two regiment commanders. Two wheeled assault guns and two MTLB track personnel carriers. There was no infantry support. If this isn't delivering food, what is it? Under the snowball effect, the consequences of the chaotic command of the 505th Brigade were magnified step by step, and now they have finally caused irreversible consequences again. Looking back at the entire battle, this consequence could actually have been completely avoided. First, Zhao Jiaoyang was questioned by the Myanmar side and made harassing calls to the Tachalike airport camp, which slowed down the response time of the frontline camp to a certain extent and maximized the losses from the rocket artillery attack. Then, Zhao Jiaoyang misjudged the morale of the frontline troops, and the orders he issued were not completely accurate, which led to hesitation in the frontline execution and let the main force of the 756th Brigade escape. Then, the trust between the front line and the rear collapsed. When pursuit became hopeless and the frontline commander made the right decision, Zhao Jiaoyang recklessly gave orders beyond his level, trying to recover the losses as much as possible with limited manpower. However, the frontline commander had no intention of getting involved and actually allowed 4 armored vehicles to die. This is the difference between militia and regular army. The team standing on top of many hills cannot withstand the test of real war. Once there is a problem in decision-making, the command system will collapse like an avalanche if it is handled improperly. When Chen Chen received the picture sent back by the drone and saw the 4 armored vehicles that were alone in the deep, he was so happy. Wow, I was just thinking that this battle lacked the icing on the cake, and now it's delivered? The distance between the two sides has widened to 4 kilometers. Ahead is Minglin, the last town within the influence of Dakali. After passing Minglin, no matter how stupid Zhao Jiaoyang is, he will not be able to chase them anymore. This means that if you want to get these cars, Minglin is your last chance. In fact, Minglin is really very suitable for action because it is just an ordinary small town located in the crack area. It has no large-scale armed forces and no reinforcements from the 505th Brigade. Moreover, this small town is built in the bay of the Sai River, a tributary of the Mekong River, with complex waterways, numerous bridges, and relatively narrow roads. If there is a traffic jam in front and behind, you will die unless you abandon your car. Thinking of this, Chen Chen immediately gave the order. Everyone take cover, ambush them at the Sai Bridge, and block them on the bridge. We will use smoke bombs to block the enemy's sight, use helicopters to suppress the air, and try to capture them without damaging the enemy's vehicles. Team 1, follow number 2 to ambush under the bridge and throw smoke bombs. Groups 2 and 3 drive the machine gun pickups and drive onto the bridge after the other side reaches the bridge to block their retreat. Group 4, organize the blasting. Blow up the road ahead. Don't let them pass. Clear. Everyone answered immediately, and Chen Chen couldn't help but smile. These 4 armored vehicles were so easy to defeat, as if the enemy had really come to surrender. But what he didn't expect was that just when the enemy entered Minglin and was about to drive onto the Saya Bridge, this armored assault team suddenly came to its senses. Instead of moving forward, they stopped at the edge of Minglin City. After a brief hesitation, they actually turned around and ran away. As a result, the Dongfeng Corps had no chance to capture them. Damn, it turns out that the enemies are not stupid. It was stupid enough to chase them here. How could they really give them more chances? They knew the situation in Minglin. Chen Chen sighed a little unwillingly. He wanted to order the helicopter to fly over and intercept these armored vehicles, but after thinking it over, he decided to give up. The reason is very simple. At this time, breaking contact is the safest option. Anyone who wants to pursue is a fool. After all, the monitoring range of drones is limited. What if the enemy has ambushed troops in the rear? What if they have anti-aircraft firepower? The cost of losing a helicopter is definitely not something Chen Chen can afford. I'll keep it for you first. It will be mine sooner or later anyway. So, he decisively ordered to continue evacuating, completely ignoring the armored vehicles. I have to say, he really overestimated Zhao Jiaoyang. The other party was not using the armored vehicle as bait to fight him at all. He just made a stupid move at the right time. If the helicopter really fired, even if the probability of capturing prisoners was low due to the terrain, there would still be a chance. Chen Chen didn't know this. He just followed his intuition and made the most rational choice. As a result, during the subsequent 100-kilometer evacuation, the team did not encounter any setbacks. It took less than 3 hours for all the troops to withdraw to the Palau defense line. At this time, He Bangxiong was commanding his remaining troops to fight with the Burmese army in Jingdong. Gunfire rang out on the battlefield, and the fighting was quite fierce. This intensity is not just on the surface. In order to confuse the Burmese army and the 505th Brigade, He Bangxiong certainly would not have carried out any feint attack. He actually put all the remaining strength in his hands in a launching round after round of attacks on the Burmese army in the Jingdong South position. He was at a disadvantage in terms of manpower and firepower. From the start of the battle to now, for hours later, he had been relying entirely on advanced protective equipment and a small amount of night vision equipment to support himself. Now, the Myanmar army has pushed to the doorstep, and there is a tendency that it will take this opportunity to break through Palau's defense line in one fell swoop. More than 200 of He Bangxiong's remaining 1,000 men on the Palau defense line have been killed. In terms of proportion, this team is on the verge of collapse. But at this time, the Dongfeng Corps finally returned. Divine soldiers descend from the sky. As the sun was rising from the east, the Mi 171sh first shot down the last rocket and completed the air strike suppression on the Myanmar positions. Afterwards, Baokila set up the heavy artillery that he had brought back, and after replenishing the ammunition, he launched a wave of precise artillery attacks on the Burmese army positions. Soon after, the Dongfeng Corps joined the battle, 600 veterans entered the battlefield, and the accurate shooters filled the gaps in the defense line. The Burmese troops that had advanced to within 50 meters in front of the position were all pushed back. The situation was reversed in an instant, and the Burmese army, which had just been unstoppable, soon collapsed and retreated. The conflict on the Palau defense line continued until noon. After the heavy firepower was replenished, the 756th Brigade regained the initiative. However, they also did not have the ability to capture Jingdong in one fell swoop. After all, the complexity of urban warfare increased exponentially compared to positional warfare. With the chips in hand, Bangxiong decided to quit while he was ahead and made the decision that best suited his current interests. And this decision actually coincides with Chen Chen's choice. The gunfire gradually stopped, and the Dongfeng Corps withdrew from the front line. When Bangxiong saw Chen holding the 416 Hong Kong dollars with a relaxed look on his face, he almost couldn't hold it in any longer. "Brother, fortunately you came back in time. All my soldiers were almost wiped out." Hearing his words, Chen Chen shook his head helplessly and replied, "Your fighting power is really enough. Fortunately, we didn't go to seize Dakali as originally planned. If we had delayed for another hour, your defense would have really collapsed. What the hell? Even though you guys are few in number, you can't be that bad at fighting, right? You can't even hold out for 5 hours." After Chen Chen finished speaking, Bangxiong also looked ashamed. For a moment, he didn't know how to answer Chen Chen's question. "You say you complain, but the Battle of Dakali for the Dongfeng Corps was much more difficult. They made a long-distance attack in just a few hours, broke through the enemy's heavy defenses, broke up the structure of 2 enemy regiments, and then withdrew smoothly to help them defend the line. In addition to the relatively large consumption of equipment throughout the entire process, the number of casualties was less than 10. This kind of record can be said to be rare, not only in Pubay, but even in the world. In comparison, I just fought a positional battle with the Burmese. In the end, not only did I fail to suppress them, but I was almost taken away by their counterattack. How could I have the face to complain about such a result? Okay, I won't complain anymore. Let's talk about the actual difficulties. Insufficient manpower, insufficient equipment, and insufficient heavy firepower. But the problem is that the Burmese on the opposite side don't have bulletproof vests. Among the more than 1,000 of us, almost 100% were equipped with heavy bulletproof vests. In this case, we were still beaten by the enemy's unarmored and lightly armored infantry. Were they not equipped enough? What else would be considered sufficient equipment? Should we send you a few more tanks? There is really no way to answer this. Fortunately, I didn't show any distrust before, otherwise now, wouldn't it be equivalent to giving myself a slap in the face? Bangxiong was silent for a long time, and finally said, "Brother, our combat effectiveness is indeed lacking. The main reason is that the army is not united and the will to fight is not strong." Even though they were wearing bulletproof vests, these soldiers were still afraid of bullets and didn't dare to shoot. Once there was a problem at one position and a gap in firepower, the entire front collapsed. It looks like more than 1,000 people are fighting against more than 2,000 people on the other side. But in fact, it is just my 200 or so private soldiers who are fighting against the other side. It's good enough that other people don't cause trouble. Fortunately, the 7th Brigade was also attacking simultaneously, distracting the Burmese army and making them confused about the situation. Otherwise, if they concentrate their forces to attack Palau, I don't think we can hold out for 2 hours, let alone 4 hours. To be honest, we were really weak this time. If you hadn't led the team back to defend the line and beat them back, I think it would have been difficult to maintain a stalemate in the future. Bangxiong's words were very sincere, and Chen Chen agreed with them deeply. He himself indeed overestimated the combat effectiveness of the 756th Brigade, thinking that even if some veterans and heavy equipment were withdrawn, it would still be possible to achieve a balance of power and stalemate based on the early deployment of the Palau defense line. But the result slapped him hard in the face and taught him a severe lesson. You must never think that the enemy is weak and you are strong just because you can easily kill the enemy. The only strong one is the Dongfeng Corps. Any other local armed forces in Pubay are just weaklings fighting each other. Thinking of this, Chen Chen nodded slightly and said in a half-comforting and half-flattering tone, "It doesn't matter. I managed to make it through after all." After this battle, we have gained a thorough understanding of our team's strength. We will have a better idea of the future combat deployment. Besides, our operation was very successful. You should have received the report. The 505th Brigade's airport camp is basically destroyed. The 1st and 2nd regiments have been dispersed. In a short period of time, they will not be able to organize an effective attack again. This is good news. Our strategic options have increased significantly. From now on, whether we go to fight Tachalike again or focus on dealing with the Burmese troops in Kingtung, the initiative is in our hands. Yes. Hearing this, Bangxiong straightened up excitedly and then said, "The situation has become completely clear. This battle has demonstrated our momentum. After this, the entire southern Shan state will lean towards us. I have already started contacting other brigades, and they will respond soon. At the same time, I just confirmed with Bupa that Mengxiu's attack has come to an end. They suffered heavy losses, but they still managed to stabilize Mengxiu's defense. So soon." Chen Chen looked at Bangxiong in surprise and asked in disbelief, "Yes, it took 4 hours. The strategy is to follow the one you formulated earlier, brother. Heavy artillery bombardment and private soldiers forming an elite force to raid. The layout of the Burmese army's camp had been figured out, so they didn't have to spend much effort to break in. Instead, the defensive battle was very fierce, with more than 100 people killed in a team of more than 700 people. In fact, this number is not tragic in Chen Chen's opinion, but on second thought, in Pubei, it can be regarded as a certain degree of heavy casualties. The 7th Brigade can withstand such casualties. In a sense, their combat effectiveness is indeed acceptable. 3 battlefields are in full bloom. The situation can be said to be better than ever before. If nothing unexpected happens, all the armed forces in the entire Shan state will soon turn to the coalition forces. Once a broader alliance is formed, what chance will the Burmese army here, and the 505th Brigade, the lackeys of the Burmese army, have to resist? Chen Chen's heartstrings, which had been tense all night, finally relaxed. At this moment, he felt tired and relieved. What was tiring was that the high-intensity command really consumed more energy and brain power than directly participating in the battle. After fighting all night, he even felt more tired than the previous half-month of fighting in Kokong. What is gratifying is that this battle verified the future combat methods of the Dongfang Corps. With 3-dimensional reconnaissance, multi-arms coordination, high-mobility operations, and heavy firepower to win, who in Pubei dares not obey? More importantly, only the Dongfang Corps can fight with this combination of punches. This is a unique advantage and the ultimate weapon that cannot be taken away by others. With it, the Dongfang Corps will be safe at any time. Thinking of this, Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief. Then he said, "We have only fought the first battle. After that, small-scale conflicts will become more and more frequent, and the 505th Brigade will not give up. Be prepared. We have lit the fuse. The whole Pubei is going to explode. Stop moving around and hitting around. Let the gunpowder explode on its own. Hide well. After the explosion, we will go out and clean up the mess. Clear." Meanwhile, Munka, Jackal sat in Chase's combat command room, reading the latest battle report while saying to the intelligence officer in front of him with emotion, "You really can never imagine what the Dongfang Corps can do, nor what the sunken ship can do. I originally thought that he left Munka to lead his team to attack the Burmese army in Mengxiu, and his helicopter was also flying there, but I didn't expect that he actually went to Palau and went to Tachalike. You said he went to Palau, but how could anyone think of sending hundreds of people to fight against Tachalike? Stabilize Palau's defense line, survive the first round of attack by the 505th Brigade, create a balance of power, and then use the bargaining chip of mutual destruction to negotiate with the Burmese army. This is the best solution I can think of." But he didn't even want such a result. From the beginning to the end, he probably never thought of compromising with the Myanmar side. He really intends to kill all the Burmese troops in Shan State, and he really has the ability to do so. This is horrible. All I can say is, luckily we are not his enemies. Hearing Jackal's words, the intelligence officer nodded in agreement, and then said, "This blitzkrieg can definitely be recorded in textbooks. With limited resources, insufficient intelligence, and ridiculously poor organization, we chose the simplest and most direct plan with the highest error tolerance rate too. Deal with it. If the personnel are not good enough, then we won't use complicated tactics so as not to affect the execution effect. If the intelligence is insufficient, then we won't set complicated goals, and we will take the elimination of the organization as the benchmark. If the equipment is not good enough, then we will use civilian equipment to modify it. In fact, the core of their operation this time is still those thousands of rockets. I guess the whole Pubei didn't expect that they could hide these weapons so well. That's where the wreck is clever." The Jackal sighed and continued, "Have you forgotten what happened before? Before the transportation of rockets and the transformation began, the shipwreck turned the Wanfeng group upside down and caused a bloody storm in the entire Shan state. Everyone's attention was drawn to it. Everyone thought that they would continue to make progress along this route. The focus was all on Wanfeng Group, while Huamei Commercial Bank, which was engaged in large-scale imports at Mengla Port, was ignored. To be honest, even I was fooled by him. I thought they really had brought in another batch of bulletproof vests, but who knew they were not bulletproof vests, but rockets. There's a saying over there, they made dumplings just for a bite of vinegar. I'm starting to doubt that Wanfeng Group is just a dumpling made for a sinking ship." The Jackal's words made the intelligence officer in front of him burst out laughing. From his point of view, this proverb was indeed funnier than all the puns the Jackal had told before. However, after laughing, his expression became serious again. He said, "Having said that, now that the fight has come to this point, we can no longer stay out of it. The 505th Brigade will definitely fall. All the investment made by the country, especially the Pamong Battalion, in them has been wiped out. This is a very heavy blow. As one strength increases, the other decreases. I think that one is going to survive." The Jackal frowned and nodded and replied, "That's my judgment as well. In this case, we should also take action. Report to the company and prepare for intervention. Now is the best time to show our loyalty. We cannot miss this opportunity." "Understood. How do I fight?" The intelligence officer stood up straight, waiting for the Jackal's answer. The Jackal hesitated for a few seconds and then said decisively, "I don't know how to fight. Contact the sunken ship and ask him. Ask him what kind of help he needs. Just tell him, no matter who the Dongfeng Corps wants to attack, we in Chai Zili will definitely help." On the other side, Dakali, Zhao Jiaoyang stood in the room with a gloomy face. His adjutant beside him was trembling with fear as he reported the battle damage to him with a trembling voice. The 1st and 2nd regiments found 470 casualties, including 210 killed and 260 seriously wounded. The number of people with minor injuries has not yet been counted, but a conservative estimate is around 500. Compared to the casualties, the equipment losses were more serious. The entire camp was almost completely destroyed. The fire was so big that we had no way to put it out. All the ammunition stored in the camp was lost, and the equipment was also severely damaged. We haven't had time to count the damage yet, but the situation is not optimistic. In addition, Captain Zhao Yuquan was seriously injured and has been sent to the hospital for treatment. His condition is basically stable. We have reorganized the scattered team, but the adjutant did not continue speaking because he knew that all the information he had said before was just a prelude, and the really fatal part was the content after the but. However, these two combat regiments are no longer able to fight. The losses of middle and lower level commanders were too great, and the morale of the army was severely damaged. These soldiers have been downgraded from soldiers to ruined soldiers. You want to make the defeated soldiers fight? Aren't you just dreaming? Therefore, these two combat regiments are actually gone. Not many people died, but the institution is gone. Thinking of this, the adjutant secretly raised his head and looked at Zhao Jiaoyang, and the other's cold eyes instantly frightened him. He had said before that the Dongfeng Corps only had 100 or 200 rockets at most, but now he lowered his head again, ready to face Zhao Jiaoyang's storm. But unexpectedly, the other party did not speak for a long time. When the adjutant couldn't bear the pain anymore and looked at him again, he found that Zhao Jiaoyang had sat back on the sofa. The latter silently waved to the adjutant, motioning him to come over and sit down. Then, Zhao Jiaoyang said, "No one can be blamed for this matter. Victory and defeat are common in the military. We can't be afraid to fight again just because we were defeated this time. Right now, we still have an advantage in terms of manpower and equipment. According to the latest intelligence, the Burmese army in Jingdong almost took over the Palau defense line. If we could just hold off their reinforcements for a few minutes, the outcome might be different. That's why I wanted to hold them back, but you guys didn't believe me." As soon as he finished speaking, a rare, disrespectful thought arose in the adjutant's mind. Aren't you just being hindsight? Of course, he couldn't say this out loud, he just agreed. We should have pursued them, but the situation was too complicated, and we can't blame the commander of the front line. So, I don't blame them. Zhao Jiaoyang sighed, his eyes stern as he continued. But this kind of thing must never happen again. If anyone disobeys orders again, I will. Ding ling ling. The ringing of the phone on the table interrupted Zhao Jiaoyang's words. He gave his adjutant a look, and the latter picked up the phone. Soon, the adjutant's expression became extremely solemn. One could even say that it was painful. He handed the receiver to Zhao Jiaoyang, and the moment he took the receiver, his hand reached for the pistol at his waist. But Zhao Jiaoyang was faster than him. The fruit knife on the table had appeared in his hand at some point, and he stabbed it into the adjutant's throat again. At this time, the man on the phone was still talking, completely unaware of the abnormality here. "Commander, we really can't wait any longer. We must immediately negotiate with other brigades and bring them over to our side. The impact of this defeat is too great for us." "He's dead, stop acting." Zhao Jiaoyang spoke coldly, interrupting the man opposite. There was silence in the receiver for a long time before the man continued. "Then I won't act. Zhao Jiaoyang, you are no longer qualified to be the commander of the 505th Brigade. We rebelled. There's no future in hanging out with you. King flatter the Pamon camp every day. Do you think they can really do you any good? I've been wanting to say this for a long time. How many lives do you have if you go against the North? You want to fight, but I don't. I'm telling you, I'm done with this. Just wait till you die." With a click, the phone was hung up. Outside the window, the sound of Dakali's gunfire rang out again. The entire Puxi North, no, the entire Pudong North was in chaos. There are wars everywhere. There are wars in Mingxiu, Dakali, Jingdong, and now even Wanhai, Dangyang, and Mengsa are fighting. It's not just Shan State, the Kachin State is also fighting, the Karen State is also fighting, and Kokang State is not fighting, but it is also ready to move. Hua State has not yet entered the scene and is still preparing for battle. It is estimated that they will wait until the final stage before becoming the main force in the battle. The Burmese are about to collapse. If the fighting continues, the peaceful order they have worked so hard to establish in Pubei will completely collapse. They are unlucky this time. The election just ended, and the internal interests have not been distributed yet. Hua State directly gave them this. Now not only Pubei, but the whole of Bagan will be in chaos. I heard that there is infighting in the 505th Brigade again. The problems between the 1st and 2nd Regiments were not properly dealt with, so the 3rd and 4th Regiments started fighting. When they attacked, the order in the Golden Triangle collapsed. The Jackal said that there are new signs in Thailand, and Laos also wants to take the opportunity to pull out the nail. The Pamon Battalion is also a big victim. We worked so hard to transport the equipment to the 505th Brigade, but now they're using their own people to fight against each other. I don't understand. I really don't understand. How did things develop to this extent? Fighting the Shadow Corps, Jingdong, and Chile, no matter how hard we fought, it shouldn't be this chaotic. If you keep doing this, something serious might happen. In Mengka, in the Dongfeng Corps villa, Dakai sat opposite Chen Chen, lamenting the chaos of the current situation. His sigh was not without reason. In fact, his words were quite mild. In the past few days, the Dongfeng Corps surprise attack on Dakali was like lighting a detonator. After the detonator exploded, it directly detonated the big gunpowder barrel of Pubei, causing fire everywhere in Pubei. Just as Dakai said, the entire Pubei has become a mess. It's not just Shan State. All other ethnic armed groups want to take advantage of this chaotic situation to gain benefits and get a piece of the pie from Myanmar. Against this backdrop, the largest armed conflict in the world broke out in 2010. According to rough statistics, in just a few days, the total number of armed personnel participating in the war has exceeded 30,000, and the number of residents affected has long exceeded 1 million. What's even more exaggerated is that this 30,000 strong force is not just a paper number like in Iraq and Afghanistan. They are really fighting seriously. This is very scary. Looking at the wars around the world in recent years, the only one that reached this scale in a short period of time was Georgia in 2008. Therefore, it is no wonder that Sher Dakai sighed, because he clearly felt that the matter was beyond his understanding. Yes, he is a somewhat special mercenary, but he is just a mercenary after all. He wanted to do a lot of things, and even made some ambitious plans. He also had a goal in his heart that he could not easily tell anyone about. However, the time it would take him to achieve this goal would be calculated in 10 or 20 years. But now, why does it feel like the spring cleaning has already begun? The commotion in Pubay, right now, is a bit like the beggar version of World War. The trigger of World War II was Germany's blitzkrieg on Poland. And now the trigger of the Second Pubay War is the Dongfeng Corps' surprise attack on Dakali? What history repeating itself? Thinking of this, Sher Dakai couldn't help but sigh again, and looking at his expression, Chen Chen shook his head gently, and then replied, Sometimes you look at things too superficially. Don't look at the current situation from a mercenary's perspective. You have to look at it from a real soldier's perspective. Yes, the fighting in Pubay is very intense right now, and there are many battles in various places. But the problem is that the intensity of these battles is not high. It's nothing more than the militia attacking, the Burmese army putting up a symbolic resistance, and then giving up their positions. You call this a war? I think it's more like a child playing house. It's still at the stage of you push me, and I push you. It's still a long way from the real fight. So in summary, those things have nothing to do with us. What we need to do is to focus on the two goals in front of us. That is Jingdong, Dakali. Only when we achieve these two goals can our mission be considered fully accomplished. After hearing Chen Chen's words, Sher Dakai's frown finally relaxed a little. Since Chen Chen said there is no problem, then there must be no problem. As he said, the fighting in other areas is just intense and has not directly interfered with the actions of the Northern Shan State Alliance Army. In that case, just don't even look at it. The idea is clear now. So he asked again, what is our next phase of the battle plan? Dakali is fighting among ourselves. Should we take this opportunity to take down Dakali? Of course not. Chen Chen immediately shook his head and then said, the reason why internal problems are internal problems is because they have not encountered external threats. It's good that we use the surprise attack to expose their contradictions and provoke a fight between them. But if we continue to fight, it will only help them strengthen their fortress. The truly effective strategy is to take over Jingdong while they are fighting among themselves. As long as we get this important town, Dakali will be ours sooner or later. So the plan for the next phase is very clear. To sum it up, it's nothing more than two sentences. First, continue to build rocket launchers. Second, fire rockets at the Burmese army and force them to hide in the city. Force them into the city? Are we going to fight an urban battle? Sher Dakai looked at Chen Chen in confusion, and Chen Chen shook his head and replied, no. How can we fight a city battle? I just want to borrow the power of the people of Jingdong. I believe that the people of Jingdong can distinguish right from wrong and have the courage to resist. Understood. Sher Dakai let out a long sigh and didn't ask any more questions. He is actually a smart man, so he can naturally guess what Chen Chen is going to do. Compared to a forceful attack, this is indeed the best way to capture Jingdong. Even if the timing is right, Jingdong can be captured without bloodshed. This is because the Burmese troops here have been out of touch with their superiors for too long. Their morale has long been shaken, and their fighting will has become extremely weak. If you give them a reason to back down, they will do it quickly. Thus, the attack plan for Jingdong was finalized. After a brief discussion of the specific implementation measures, Chen Chen arranged the tasks one by one. Although he was no longer involved in actual combat, he still planned all his actions carefully, trying to make sure that nothing could go wrong. All members of the Dongfeng core group took over their tasks in turn and prepared to enter the specific implementation process. In the conference room, everyone was discussing the specific details intensely, but at this moment, Chen Chen's cell phone suddenly rang. It's Xiaoyu's call. Chen Chen picked up the phone, and before he could speak, Xiaoyu said in a serious tone, look at the New York Times, the headline. With a click, the phone was hung up. Chen Chen glanced at his phone in confusion, then opened the New York Times homepage on his computer in confusion. But when he looked at the big headline on the webpage, he was completely numb, because he saw his own photo. The main title of the photo is Mercenary, Warlord or Warlord. The subtitle is Shipwreck, the real eye of the storm in Pubay. War Dog, Warlord, or Lord of War? This is the real headline of the New York Times. It has to be said that in terms of attracting attention, they are far better than the pornographic news that Chen Chen had seen in his previous life. The three powerful wars not only echo the current situation in Pubay, but also fully fit the theme of this report. Especially the last two words. Although the words are almost the same, the meanings they express are completely different. Not to mention the ignorant crowd, even Chen Chen himself had the urge to read it quickly when he saw it. However, the first thing he did was still to find the author's name. Fortunately, it was not Jia. After searching, he found that the author of this article was a relatively well-known journalist who had always been paying attention to the situation in Pubay in the past, so it was reasonable for him to write such a report. Of course, it is impossible for this person not to have a CIA background. The most important thing is to see what he actually wrote. Chen Chen clicked on the headline's webpage. He had no choice but to look at his face again. Fortunately, the Dongfeng Corps paid great attention to the confidentiality of their identities in most public operations, and basically wore masks. This secretly taken photo was quite blurry, and only the Asian features could be barely seen. All the members of the core group have come over curiously. Chen Chen was too lazy to hide it, and simply projected the picture onto the screen. After seeing the big face photo of Chen Chen, Even Shidakai couldn't help but complain. This is a terrible photo. Honestly, if they wanted to publish a news story, they could have contacted us for the photo. You think this isn't a big enough problem, right? Chen Chen rolled his eyes at him, and the latter spread his hands indifferently and replied, "In fact, I've already prepared myself for this situation. Things are getting bigger, and sooner or later we will be targeted. This is just the beginning. We may all be in the newspapers in the future." That makes sense. Chen Chen shook his head helplessly, then scrolled the mouse to the main text page. The first sentence of the text made Chen Chen unable to hold back. There is absolutely no enemy in this world that cannot be defeated. If there is, it must be because the fire is not burning vigorously enough. Shipwreck. When the hell did I say that? Chen Chen looked around in confusion, while the others shook their heads. Although he never said it, the words he made up seemed like something you would actually say. Bao Qi nodded thoughtfully, seeming to agree with this evaluation. But Shidakai shook his head and added, "In fact, this sentence is not quite appropriate. You should add if the fire is not strong enough. It must be because the wind is not strong enough, which makes it more reasonable." "Stop talking about this now." Chen Chen chuckled and said nothing more. At this point, he felt much more relieved. He was really afraid that this thing was a serious in-depth report that could reveal the entire background of the Dongfeng Corps. But now, as the author begins with an obviously made-up quote as a headline, he is probably just trying to make a big news story. So, Chen Chen decisively raised his hand to signal everyone to shut up, then rolled the mouse and began to carefully read the news story that made the headlines. How long does it take to go from a defeated soldier to the strongest special forces in the region? The answer given by the mercenary group called Dongfeng is 2 years. In 2 years, this mercenary group has grown from 4 people and 4 guns to possessing the most advanced rifles, heavy artillery, armored vehicles, and even helicopters. Countless enemies have fallen before them, and many of these enemies have even appeared in our headlines. They are veritable headline killers and inhumane battlefield butchers. According to preliminary statistics from sources, in the past 2 years, the direct casualties caused by this team have reached 3,000 people, a large number of which came from their reckless use of fire attack tactics. In many battles, they even used thermite and white phosphorus bombs, blatantly violating the Geneva Convention and disregarding the lives of civilians. The most typical case is the attack launched by the Dongfeng Corps on the Henry Hotel in Laogai, Kokang. In this offensive, the Dongfeng Corps used homemade thermite to set fire and destroyed a large hotel that could accommodate thousands of people. According to people familiar with the scene, the burning flames could even be seen in Huaiyan province hundreds of kilometers away. In addition, the Dongfeng Corps also used a large number of anti-humanitarian weapons and even used large oil tankers to make explosives. Last October, this armed team created a large explosion in the Mekong River area, destroying dozens of ships and causing hundreds of casualties. After the explosion, they set fire to the mountains, burning tens of thousands of square meters of forest. The black smoke produced by the burning lasted for more than a week. And this is just a small part of their crazy tactics. According to informed sources, the Dongfeng Corps never accepts any prisoners on the battlefield, nor does it return the bodies of the dead. As of now, the bodies of some international security company employees are still being detained by the Dongfeng Corps or have been handled by the Corps. They are cruel and have strong combat capabilities and have become one of the most serious destabilizing factors in the area. The true purpose of this corps is far from being revealed. The report ended here. The author added many news photos to his article. When Chen Chen saw those photos that he had actually been to the scene in person, he couldn't help but frown. "Oh shit, I didn't feel anything when I was fighting, but now looking back, was what I did really so crazy?" The hotel, which was burned to a charred black, was particularly eye-catching in the bustling urban area. The wreckage of the ship floating on the Mekong River, with its twisted keel, showed the power of the shocking explosion. The flaming fire truck was photographed from an unknown angle. It was simply a postmodern science fiction oil painting. And the wounded lying in the Burmese army camp, which was obviously taken after the war, pushed the atmosphere created by the author to a climax. Damn it, Chen Chen, damn it. Chen Chen scratched his head, and he suddenly realized that if he were really an ordinary person, after reading this report, he would probably only be shocked by the brutality of this army. After all, these words and pictures are so powerful that fake news is child's play. Only those who selectively report half of the words are real masters. What? You only said that I burned the hotel. But why didn't you say that Henry Hotel is the den of illegal gambling, drug trafficking, and human trafficking? You said I blew up a boat on the Mekong River, but the boat I blew up was not Cam's boat, okay? Also, what the hell are the employees of an international security company? How can the mercenaries of the Shadow Legion be any nobler than us? Public opinion. If you don't occupy the high ground of public opinion, it will be occupied by the enemy. Chen Chen clenched his fist and secretly memorized the author's name. He wished he could find an opportunity to go to the United States and let this man feel the iron fist of the Dongfeng Corps. But of course, he also knew that this might not be possible in the short term. However, as the company grew bigger and bigger, it seemed that it was indeed time to engage in some public opinion warfare. It won't do to keep hiding. Now that you're already standing in the front stage, you might as well start your performance openly. After Jingdong is taken, let's get this thing done. Chen Chen let out a light breath and scrolled down again. If they were just war dogs fighting for money, perhaps what this corps did would not attract much attention. In fact, in the early days of this corps, what they did was not much different from other mercenary groups active in Pubay. According to reliable sources, the first documented mission of this mercenary group was to assist the Thai side in completing an escort mission. They rescued a European journalist from the kidnappers and sent him to a safe area, just like all other mercenary groups and security companies completed their missions. But after that, the Dongfeng Corps began to come into contact with higher-level forces, and their ambitions were exposed. Just a few days after the escort mission was completed, this mercenary group assisted the local warlord of Myanmar in launching an armed coup, overthrowing the originally stable management order and supporting a new puppet warlord to come to power. During this coup, there is evidence that they used fuel-air explosives and white phosphorus bombs to attack and brutally killed the former local military and administrative chiefs without any negotiation. After that, the Dongfeng Corps' actions became more and more crazy. With the help of the new puppet warlord, they obtained a large amount of heavy equipment, penetrated deep into the Golden Triangle area, eliminated a large number of potential enemies, and looted a large amount of equipment and property. Afterwards, with the dual blessing of equipment and property, they entered the Kokong area and assisted the Allied forces in launching a bloody suppression of the local democratic resistance forces. The Henry Hotel fire mentioned earlier occurred during this period. It is understood that all peaceful and democratic forces in Kokong were destroyed in this crackdown. The Allied forces regained power and colluded with senior officials of the Myanmar military government to continue their high-pressure rule in Kokong. It is worth mentioning that in the Kokong incident, the Dongfeng Corps also launched a brutal and fierce attack on the Kachin democratic forces. A legal trading company was affected, and more than 100 Kachin people were massacred. Immediately afterwards, the Dongfeng Corps turned its attention to local third-party forces, attempting to eliminate all external observation forces. Members of Shadow International Security Company affiliated with MPRI were attacked, and all employees were killed. MPRI has responded to this matter and will use more resources to get to the bottom of it. Blatantly attacking a third-party neutral force is already the craziest limit we can think of, but this is not the limit of the Dongfeng soldiers. After clearing out the observers, the Dongfeng Corps directly participated in the rebels' attack on the important town of Pubay, breaking the peace reorganization agreement, and continuing to provoke the government forces, causing heavy casualties. Under their influence, the once stable situation in Pubay became turbulent again, and the largest armed conflict in decades broke out. Regional peace faces serious challenges, and geopolitical stability is under serious threat. And the instigator of all this never spoke up for the victims from beginning to end. This is where the second part of the report ends. This time, the author's illustrations are still explosive. What about the bleeding civilians pointed at by guns? What about the bodies being executed at close range? What about the teddy bears stained with gun smoke and blood? What about the children carried to the hospital by their tearful fathers? Damn it. Do these photos have anything to do with me? Chen Chen can pat his chest and say that his previous actions may have indeed caused some impact on civilians. But the direct casualties? No. Even the indirect injuries caused by their actions could never exceed 10. Who of the people I killed didn't deserve it? Moreover, the four big families have become a democratic resistance force? What kind of hellish joke is this? Are companies that buy and sell arms and carry out terrorist acts also considered legal trading companies? You can't say that others are also legal just because you do it yourself? There is no way to deny that the peace reorganization agreement was broken, but the problem is, this is Pubay's internal affairs. What does it have to do with you? Chen Chen's hair was about to explode. The writing style of this report was really strong. He suppressed his nausea and continued to watch, but as he watched, he suddenly felt something was wrong. What was going on? Although every sentence was an attack and belittlement, I actually felt pretty awesome watching it. The text of the report kept flashing on the screen, and this long report was nearing its end. The origin of this mercenary group is mysterious, and its amazing combat power is even more mysterious. After much investigation, the author still has not obtained any evidence about the other party's true background. But the undeniable fact is that the appearance of this mercenary group did not bring any improvement to the already turbulent situation in Pubay. On the contrary, their barbaric expansion has caused serious adverse consequences, and its leader, a mercenary nicknamed Shipwreck, has also become a disgusting warmonger. Every time he appears, it means a new war and the loss of one life after another. Perhaps mercenary, warlord, or warlord are not enough to describe him appropriately and accurately. He is a ruthless mercenary, a brutal warlord, a cold-blooded criminal, an anti-human killing machine, a crazy chaos maker, the eye of the storm that destroys all peace and order. To solve Pubay's problem, perhaps, we should solve his problem first. This is the end of the full report. Chen Chen let out a long sigh and closed the computer with a snap. Then he gritted his teeth and said, "Damn it, sooner or later, I will hang all these damn Western media on the wall. I want to see how many words they can write if they spread their cheeks." Hearing his words, Shirdakai on the side couldn't help but laugh out loud. It's hard to say whether they have the nerve to do this, let alone write a few words. It's actually not a big deal. This report is too exaggerated and will not be accepted by the authorities. I was quite worried at first, but after reading the whole thing, I don't think it's a big deal. It's really no big deal. This report is too exaggerated in both wording and facts. It does not touch the core of the problem at all, and even makes many common sense mistakes that even the Americans themselves would not admit. For example, the article's attitude towards Myanmar is unclear, which is not in line with the current grand strategy of the United States at all. For example, it claims that the Shadow Corps belongs to MPRI. Isn't this simply a slap in the face of the Ministry of National Defense? Obviously, this report does not represent the official opinion of the United States that IT may have some connection with the CIA, but it is not likely to be strong. Because if the CIA really wanted to defeat the Dongfeng Corps in the war of public opinion, it would not say anything like anti-humanity or massacre, because these things are too easy to refute. They only focus on one point of attack, which is to interfere with the democratic process in the region. A large number of warlords in Africa were killed for this reason. Who cares whether there is a massacre or not? Thinking of this, Chen Chen finally felt relieved. This report exposed the Dongfeng Corps to everyone and created an extremely negative image for it, which would indeed cause considerable trouble. But fortunately, it's not that troublesome. So he said, it's just a minor incident, don't worry about it. Don't worry, just do what you need to do, we. Ding ling ling. Before he could finish his words, the phone on the desk rang again. After answering the phone, Jackal's iconic enthusiastic voice immediately rang out. Shipwreck, no, it's Pubei's Angel of Death. Hello. Why did you give me such a nickname? Chen Chen asked helplessly. Haven't you seen it yet? The headline of the New York Times, the sinking of the warlord's ship, the eye of the storm in Pubei. But these nicknames are meaningless. Now, everyone has started to give you new nicknames. The War Master of the Allied Forces, the Angel of Death, the Punisher, the Dark Knight with gun, and so on. In short, you have become very famous this time. Not only in the industry, your name is now known to ordinary people. There are a lot of accounts about you on Facebook, and your videos on YouTube have also gone viral. Someone uploaded the video of the Henry Hotel fire that they filmed earlier, and it received a huge number of hits. Has it come to this? Hearing what the Jackal said, Chen Chen frowned. In fact, he had already prepared for the possibility of his identity being exposed. Because after causing so many big things, it is basically impossible for you to leave no trace in this world and not be noticed by anyone. However, even after reading the New York Times report, he still felt that the influence of this public report would be limited to a relatively controllable range. He never thought that this thing would actually go beyond the circle. At this point in 2010, although internet social media was not very developed, some influential websites had indeed been born. Facebook and Twitter, for example, have user numbers that have reached tens of millions or even hundreds of millions. But the problem isn't this kind of website just for bored netizens to rate girls, share erotic pictures and short videos, and then attack the northern government? How can I, a mercenary in Pubei, compete with naked girls for traffic? Why do you guys pay attention to me when you have nothing to do? With this little time, you can already rush at the screen so many times. Why do you give me such an outrageous nickname? Do you really think I'm not dying fast enough? Chen Chen felt a deep sense of powerlessness. He knew very well that becoming famous at this point in time would definitely not be a good thing for him. The reason is very simple. What they're doing is a business that costs money and lives. What they sell is private force, not Thai fragrant rice or Burmese jade. People in this line of work are most afraid of becoming famous, and Blackwater is a lesson for us. Back then, they also enjoyed a wave of benefits from being a net celebrity and thought they had found the right development path, so they began to publicize it heavily. But what is the result? The more aggressively you advertise, the more people will pay attention to you. As long as you do even one wrong thing, it will be magnified infinitely, and you will be harassed endlessly. In the end, no matter whether they use formal or informal means, the attacks will only stop when you are killed or disbanded. This is a very real risk, and it is also a problem that Chen Chen must deal with next. But looking at the Jackal, he really seems to have no perception of such risks. After hearing Chen Chen's question, he not only did not think there was anything wrong, but answered happily. Yes, it ferments very quickly, and I estimate that your popularity will be even higher in the future. By the way, you don't have to worry about the negative image issue anymore, because some people have already started to publish articles to refute the New York Times. They refuted the New York Times arguments almost point by point, sorted out the situation in Pubei, and marked the identities of those people you killed. Something like Nuakong by Swatching, the old Fajia business in Banglong, and so on and so forth. Why else do you think you were called the Dark Knight with a gun? Because many people think you were the Batman of Pubei. Abstract, too abstract. Jackal's words gave Chen Chen a feeling of extreme unreality. But on second thought, the Western world has a natural heroic filter for so-called vigilantes and vigilantes. And it just so happens that what I do is really like a vigilante. Fighting drug dealers, destroying warlords, and resisting the Myanmar government have always played the role of villains in the US propaganda in the past few years. What else can this be but a vigilante? Oh my god, I didn't expect that I would benefit from the US policy change. So who is refutating? Chen Chen asked curiously. He had no special meaning in this sentence. He just wanted to know which Western media could seek truth from facts. But what the Jackal said next made his emotions, which had just relaxed a little, tense up again. Haven't you guessed who it is yet? Why should I call you specifically? Jia, Chen Chen asked subconsciously. No way, she's still alive? Wait, even if she's still alive, how can she still be living freely? Hearing his words, the Jackal's tone turned serious. He replied, the main rebuttal came from a tweet from the same Twitter account called Sun News, which was a fake account of the Sun, but its previous content was legitimate news. You can go and look at that tweet yourself. There are some details that only people who have actually come into contact with you would know. For example, the tweet said that the death of Chen Yimin's family from the 7th Brigade was the work of the Burmese army. You still remember that this excuse was something we had decided on before, but it was definitely not spread. So, I judge that this report is very likely from Jia, but I really don't know where she is now. Didn't she go to Thailand? Chen Chen asked. She did go to Thailand, but after arriving in Chiang Mai, she had completely cut ties with Chaisri. Jurisdiction over her has been transferred to the authorities, and we have no right to intervene. Or indeed, we do not want to intervene. So, now I am as curious as you are. I really want to know how this woman survived. As you said, if she not only survived, but is still alive and well, the story behind it would be quite amazing. It's really amazing. Chen Chen became more and more confused, but apart from confusion, he had no more worries. Because if it is confirmed to be Jia, then combined with the report mentioned by Jackal, at least a basic judgment can be made. That is, Jia did not really join the CIA. Otherwise, she wouldn't have jumped out to speak for herself at this time. Of course, to be realistic, she wasn't necessarily speaking for herself. Maybe she took advantage of this trend, just because the story of a Batman with a gun born in a chaotic place is more attractive and can create more benefits for her than the so-called Pubei warlord fabricated by the New York Times. But no matter what, her actions did not bring any trouble to Chen Chen himself, but instead helped Chen Chen solve some of the troubles. Come to think of it, this is indeed Jia's style. He is deep-minded, calculating, and taking advantage of everyone around him and seizing every opportunity. But he basically does not harm others for his own benefit, but instead pursues a win-win situation. This woman was probably the representative of chaotic goodness. Her camp wasn't much different from Chen Chen's own, except that one used guns and the other used conspiracy and intrigue. Thinking of this, Chen Chen stopped asking questions and instead said to Jackal, "Please pay more attention to this matter for me. I don't have time to care about the media and public opinion, but you are quite free. Especially pay attention to the dynamics of that account. If possible, find Jia and contact her." Hearing Chen Chen's words, the Jackal on the opposite side said, "Oh," with a little dissatisfaction, and then said, "I'm not idle. I just have nothing to do. Last time I asked you if you needed our help, but you said no. Don't worry about it. How can you help?" Chen Chen pursed his lips speechlessly and continued. "If I ask you to take down Dakali and kill Zhao Jiaoyang, can you do it? If I ask you to besiege Jingdong and incite public opinion, can you do it? If the arms supply is insufficient and I ask you to buy more, can you get them? If there is a chaos in Pubei and you go to suppress it, can you handle it? Stop talking nonsense. Now is not the time for you to help. When the situation stabilizes, you will have plenty of work to do. Now, just help me deal with these things that others can't handle well." As soon as Chen Chen finished speaking, the Jackal started barking. "Sinking ship, your words are so hurtful. I demand that you apologize to me immediately. Quickly. You kid. You won't play with me unless you apologize, right? Forget it. There's one more thing. According to inside information, the King of Thailand will be alive in the next few days. This is the most important news. Perhaps the real purpose of Jackal making this call is to talk about this matter. How long will it take? I don't know, but it will definitely be within a week. You must resolve the problem in Kingtung as soon as possible, and then prepare to take Tachalike. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. You will get a vacuum window, and the geopolitical situation in Dakali will become extremely clean. If you don't take Dakali during this period, it will be difficult to find another opportunity. This is a true token of allegiance. The fact that the Jackal could tell him the news in advance means that he has already planned to officially board the ship. I understand. I'll take care of it. Chen Chen opened his mouth and answered. There is no need for excessive words. The tacit understanding between the two has actually been reached. Okay, that's it. Jackal hung up the phone, and just when Chen Chen wanted to do some serious work and arrange the specific battle plan for the Jingdong attack, his phone kept ringing again. This time it was Small Fish. "Have you finished reading the report?" Xiaoyu asked in a serious tone. "I've read it, it's nothing serious, but I have a question. This report has been out for almost 6 hours, and it is already fermented on social media. Isn't your response too slow?" Chen Chen asked back. "You're the first to complain? What? Do you want to give us some constructive suggestions on our work?" "That's right. You should have paid attention to public opinion trends in a timely manner," Chen Chen said stubbornly. He was not being unreasonable, but was really giving Xiaoyu some advice. In fact, during this period, the North's control over the so-called international public opinion was really weak. The fact that such important news was discovered several hours later cannot be attributed to any problems with the intelligence channel. All I can say is that our work thinking has not changed yet, and we have not yet adapted to the way information is disseminated in the internet era. Therefore, if I can slightly change their working methods through this opportunity, it will be helpful to the subsequent cooperation between both parties. After hearing what Chen Chen said, Xiaoyu on the other side did not insist, but said and replied, "Our reaction speed was indeed slow this time, and there will definitely be improvements in the future, but this is not the point we want to discuss now. The problem we are facing now is that the first wave of offensive launched by the enemy, the opponent has already begun. If you fail to cope with it well, you will be cut off and abandoned. I want to know, what are your plans now? Change your appearance or persevere to the end? Hold on till the end." Chen Chen answered without hesitation. "It's meaningless to change your name. Isn't the example of Blackwater right before our eyes? No matter what name we change, no matter how we disband and reorganize, as long as I am alive, they will never give up. Instead of reacting passively, we should take the initiative. Anyway, we have nothing to fear from our own evildoers. The people I beat are all those who deserve to die in the universal sense. What should I be afraid of?" Didn't you read the comments on social media? At least for now, the image of the Dongfeng Corps is still positive. The New York Times report did not cause much biased opinions, except for stirring up the heat. After all, the facts are too clear. No matter how unreasonable the Americans are, they can't say that Na Cam didn't deserve to die, right? Indeed. But what about Tachalike? What about Kingtung? Xiaoyu then asked. "They will attack you from countless unexpected angles, and you will be under incomparable pressure. This pressure is definitely not as simple as a few harmless insults in the news, but no need but." Chen Chen interrupted Xiaoyu and continued. "They do have countless reasons to attack me, but as long as we do one big thing right, no one can point fingers at us anymore. What are you going to do? Don't you know what I'm going to do?" Chen Chen played a guessing game with Xiaoyu. It wasn't that he didn't want to say it, but he really couldn't say it. Nonsense, if he really said the word EXEX, wouldn't he be screwed? There is no such term now. The most mentioned term now is a radiation center facing South Asia. So, he could only let Xiaoyu guess. And it was obvious that Xiaoyu definitely knew the answer to his riddle. Because the reason why she appeared in Pubei and the Golden Triangle before was actually to be the outpost of this super macro strategy. The two of them were silent for a long time. so silent that even Chen Chen began to reflect on whether he was still too explicit. Xiu finally spoke. Remember, this is Hua State's own idea, not ours. It was originally Hua State's own idea, to eliminate the regional barriers under the rule of warlords, open up the transportation line in Pubei, promote external economic circulation, vigorously develop alternative economy, eliminate drugs and other illegal trade, introduce advanced production capacity, build Pubei's economic artery, achieve healthy economic development, and promote regional peace and stability. That's right. Bao Xiaomei told me all of these. You better be. Yes, from the beginning. Okay, go ahead. Xiu on the other end of the phone sighed, and then said, it has come to this point. It is impossible to say anything to keep you out of it. You can only go down this path until the end. If you can make it, everything will be fine. If you can't make it, everything will be over. The key lies in King Tung, in Tachalike. The king of Thailand is going to live, and you don't have much time. I understand. It's just what happened in the past few days. Chen Chen replied. So confident? Xiaoyu's tone became relaxed, a kind of relaxation that is like giving up everything. Oh, just a jingdong. 3 days. Bring your Mao Dai and prepare to come to Menka. Remember, I want to drink fake yin. If you want to take jingdong, it is impossible to succeed by external offensive. If you really want to fight and they retreat into the city and fight you in the streets, do you think you will go in or not? Go in. They can outlast you even if they delay. Without the stalemate caused by the outer traffic blockade, the Burmese can still find opportunities to arrange support troops. With the cooperation between inside and outside, the coalition forces will collapse without even having to fight. If you say you won't go in, the unrest in Pubei cannot be sustained for long after all. Once the situation is settled again, the pressure on the coalition forces will become greater and greater. Therefore, Chen Chen's strategy was very simple, which was to take advantage of this unrest to arrange a soft offensive to disintegrate the Jingdong defenders from within. He arranged a series of actions and mobilized all the means he could think of with the aim of completely eliminating the Burmese armies will to resist within a few days. All actions are targeted. First of all, in response to the increasingly strong resistance to the strict martial law policy in Jingdong City, Chen Chen created a reason for the people to take to the streets. After he used drones to complete a detailed reconnaissance and determine the locations of Jingdong's few remaining air defense forces, he used heavy artillery to destroy all the anti-aircraft guns. Since then, the entire Jingdong has fallen into an extremely disadvantaged situation with no air superiority at all. However, he did not launch an airstrike. Instead, he ordered helicopters to fly 7 or 8 times a day to drop large amounts of supplies into Jingdong City. At this time, due to the severe obstruction of internal and external transportation, although the coalition forces did not do the evil act of cutting off food and grass, the supplies in the city were still not sufficient. That's easy. He threw into the city whatever the city needed. Vegetables in short supply. Throw in 4 tons of messy vegetables from a plane, and don't care if they break into pieces. Meat in short supply. Throw in the best pork. Daily necessities in short supply. Do you want towels and clothes? All for you. As for the timing of delivery, it is also very important. Just choose to vote during the time of martial law, and vote on the main streets. If you don't come out, you will just watch as all the supplies are taken away by the defenders, and you will have to eat rice soaked in bland soup. The effect of this strategy can be said to be immediate. The people were already complaining about the martial law, and the Burmese army was almost unable to suppress it, so Chen Chen just gave a small push, and the martial law system collapsed immediately. That afternoon, large-scale chaos broke out in Jingdong, with a large number of people taking to the streets. Seeing that they could no longer suppress the situation, the Myanmar army simply lifted the martial law. And this is just the first step of Chen Chen's internal offensive. In the second step, he launched an incessant rocket attack on the Burmese army camps. The 6,000 rockets that are being modified in the factory will be used as they are produced. They are not intended to cause too much damage, but to increase psychological pressure and lower the sanity value. From morning till night, there is a round every 10 minutes or half an hour. Are you afraid or not? The Burmese army is definitely afraid, and the people are even more afraid. Because under Chen Chen's arrangement, there were always 1 or 2 disobedient rockets that accidentally flew to the edge of the residential area. Although no civilian casualties were caused, who knows if there will be any in the future? Such continuous harassment dealt a heavy blow to the morale of the entire Myanmar army. They had all heard about the battle situation in Tachalike. They fire rockets like they are free. How many rockets do these people on the other side have in stock? They didn't dare to think about it, and could only pray that the rockets would stop. But it was impossible to stop. From the first day of the offensive, the fire in the Burmese army camp never stopped. They were busy trying to put out the fire, and the commander ordered several attacks. But without air superiority, they were almost instantly pushed back. The Burmese side fell into a completely passive situation. They had completely lost the ability to break through, but staying here would mean a slow death. The morale of the army was further shaken, and then Chen Chen arranged a third plan. There's nothing fancy about this. It's just simply distributing leaflets to publicize the current situation in various parts of Pubei. Leaflets fell on the streets like snow. It was not until this time that the Burmese troops defending the city realized how serious the consequences of lifting martial law would lead to. But it was too late. The residents of the city had already seen the leaflets and understood the situation outside. Now, not only the morale of the army was shaken, but the people's morale also began to waver. If the residents of Jingdong would stand on the side of the Myanmar army before, because of historical inertia, now, facing the inevitable defeat, there is really no point for them to resist. However, knowing that it is meaningless and being sure to give up resistance are two different things. They also need someone to give them a final push and a reason to rebel. The reason is simple, just one word: street fighting. Chen Chen ordered the coalition forces to launch a full-scale offensive. But in this offensive, the Dongfeng Corps took off their clothes and participated in it, acting as a sharp knife or a sledgehammer, forcing a small Burmese army into the city. He did nothing more and did not pursue. He simply fired 2 fuel air bombs at a breeding farm on the outskirts of the city that had been scouted out in advance. And that is enough. When the offensive receded and the Burmese detachment advanced back to the defense line, the residents of the city saw dead pigs all over the ground. Good news: pork prices fell sharply that night. Bad news: this time it was the pig, next time it might be you. As word of mouth spread, the mentality of Jingdong residents finally collapsed. They finally foresaw the consequences of this war being dragged on, and they finally recognized a fact. If the war continued, they, the civilians, would be the ultimate victims. Their illusions were shattered, their minds were opened, and the situation suddenly reversed. That night, a large-scale conflict broke out at the Jingdong city checkpoint. Armed civilians killed a large number of defenders, but were eventually suppressed by heavy machine guns. Only 2 days had passed. Too fast. Chen Chen's original plan for the next step was not used. He originally thought that he would lead the team to sneak into Jingdong and then take the initiative to create some chaos. But he didn't expect that Jingdong's commander was smarter than he expected. 2 hours after the riots broke out, he Bonxiong received a call from the Myanmar military seeking peace. 3 hours later, the Myanmar government officially confirmed the date for a new round of in-depth negotiations. This means that the strategy of fighting and talking and fighting during this period, which Bao Xiaomei, Chen Chen, and others had been emphasizing before the war, of making it a fait accompli, has finally been implemented. Since we have decided to talk, there is no need to fight anymore. Jingdong can be part of the coalition forces, at least temporarily. As for who will belong to in the future, that is a political matter and does not have to be a military matter. So, 46 hours after Chen Chen threw the first carrot to Jingdong, the Jingdong defenders laid down their arms. At this point, Jingdong, which had been besieged by the 756th Brigade for more than 9 months and blocked for 2 months, was completely reopened. Chen Chen breathed a sigh of relief as he watched the Burmese troops walking out from Jingdong with their hands raised. The war was without bloodshed. The next one is Dakali, and the Battle of Dakali will surely be a sea of blood and corpses. Because there is absolutely no room for negotiation between himself, the coalition forces, and Zhao Jiaoyang. All the troops can now be joined together. In addition to leaving behind basic defensive forces, all combat power of the 7th Brigade and the 756th Brigade must be put into combat operations against Dakali. The peaceful liberation of Jingdong is great news. We didn't lose too many troops here, and we can be more relaxed in subsequent operations. But even so, the total number of soldiers we have available is only about 3,000. Even if we take into account the rebels of the 505th Brigade, the total strength is only about 3,500. Zhao Jiaoyang currently has about 2,000 soldiers, of which 1,000 are highly organized and obedient private soldiers. The most troublesome thing is that Zhao Jiaoyang has made up his mind to fight us in the city, and they have retreated into the city of Dakali. The rebels' 4th Regiment can't get through at all. They have already paid a heavy price, and their will to fight has been wasted. We can't count on them. The only people we can rely on are the 3,000 men we have. It's hard to beat Dakali. It will definitely turn into a giant meat grinder. In the Dongfeng Corps villa, Chen Chen sat on the sofa, facing the people in front of him, and spoke in a serious tone. After hearing his words, Bao Xiaomei, He Bupa, and He Bonxiong all had solemn expressions on their faces. They had just won a battle and achieved great results that they had not even dared to dream of before, and they had also completed the basic goal of this joint operation. But after hearing what Chen Chen said, they all realized the seriousness of the current problem. The battle is far from over. If they don't take over Dakali, given the current situation in southern Shan State, the situation they want to create will always be just a semi-finished product, and the source of this so-called lifeline is still in the hands of others. They can cut off your entire traffic route at any time, which means that they have the ultimate bargaining chip in their hands. Negotiation? It is impossible to negotiate with Zhao Jiaoyang. If he could talk, he should have started talking when his own team had problems. It would definitely not be delayed until now. Even when the real urban street fighting has begun, there is still no sign of willingness to negotiate. Thinking of this, even Bao Xiaomei, who had always advocated solving problems through negotiation and political means, looked embarrassed. She frowned and thought for a moment, then said, "If it doesn't work, we'll reveal our identities and start a fight. As long as Hua State decides to join the war, Zhao Jiaoyang will have absolutely no chance of winning. If he continues to fight like this, he will definitely lose. He won't." "No." Chen Chen interrupted her and said, "If Jingdong couldn't be taken down, it would be fine for Hua State to show its identity. But now we are fighting Dakali, and we need to fill the last link of the entire transportation line. If you, Hua State, show up now, it will be completely superfluous. Not only will Zhao Jiaoyang be unable to surrender, but even the stalemate with the Burmese that we have worked so hard to build up will be destroyed, and the entire Pubei will be dragged into an endless vortex of conflict. No one benefits. The only ones who are probably happiest are the arms dealers. But the problem is that Tachalite controls the Mekong River hub, and the 505th Brigade is one of the biggest arms dealers. In this case, isn't it the same as giving him money? Hua State cannot participate in the war. This is the most basic political consideration. If you don't believe me, you can bring it up during the next negotiation with the Burmese and see how they react. Believe me, as long as you mention it, even if it's just a test, it will definitely cause them to react violently." "Understood." Bao Xiaomei nodded slowly, agreeing with Chen Chen's judgment. But after a brief pause, she continued, even if State cannot join the war, our best solution is still to use force to suppress the enemy. Shouldn't we fight street battles with the 505th Brigade? Although I have never participated in actual combat, I know that street fighting is the most difficult. I'm going to be frank here. Once the street fighting starts, even if we can win in the end, all 3,000 people from the 7th Brigade and the 756th Brigade will be involved. By then, both of us, brigade commanders will be left alone, and anyone who wants to bully us will be able to do so. How do we solve this problem? There is no way to solve it. Hearing his words, Chen Chen's face showed approval. Over the past year, as she has handled more and more big things and dealt with more and more complicated relationships, Bao Xiaomei has finally made great progress and started to truly learn how to maneuver rather than just being petty-minded and smooth-tongued. Being able to proactively expose this issue at this point in time is equivalent to taking the initiative to bear the consequences with the identity of State. Even if there is no suitable solution in the end, at least the discussion process will not require too much intrigue. After hearing her words, He Bongxiong and He Bupa showed a look of relief on their faces. They had indeed wanted to talk about this issue a long time ago, but given their status, it would be inappropriate for anyone to raise this point. Ms. Bao was very thoughtful. To be honest, we all have this concern. We can fight Dakali, and we must fight him, but what happens after we fight him? We are soldiers. We conquered our territory with the barrel of a gun. If we lose our men and our guns, then we are all doomed. The person who was speaking was He Bongxiong. Compared with Ibupa, the problem he faced was actually more serious. Because the 7th Brigade's territory is relatively close to State, it can still get the protection of State to some extent. In addition, with the Dongfeng Corps as the stabilizer, Ibupa still has a chance to develop again even if his people are killed. But what about him? Fighting alone, if he dies, then there is really nothing he can do. This is a very tricky problem, and even Chen Chen has no solution to it. How can we keep a warlord who has no soldiers under his command alive? The difficulty of this problem is probably much higher than how to take down Dakali itself. After all, the coalition forces had nothing to talk to Zhao Jiaoyang about, but He Bongxiong could still talk to Zhao Jiaoyang. Chen Chen frowned, and after a long time, he asked, on this transportation line, which other militias will benefit? I mean the ethnic armed groups other than State. The Eastern Shan State Army, Lin Mingxian's side, but he doesn't have to participate because the impact is relatively small. After thinking for a moment, Bao Xiaomei continued, there is a Mofa battalion with a small number of people. It is essentially a bandit camp with more than 200 people. It is sandwiched between State and the 7th Brigade. Besides that, the only ones who can benefit and take out their guns are other mercenary groups, but they fight for money. I don't think it would be easy to persuade them to do such a life-threatening business. That means it's nothing. Chen Chen sighed, turned to He Bongxiong again, and said seriously, Brigade Commander we have no other choice. You are the only one who can take the lead, and you must bear the consequences that we must bear. Your 756th Brigade is likely to be emptied and will likely face difficulties for a period of time. But I can assure you that the Dongfeng Corps will do its utmost to ensure that you are not swallowed up. If you believe me, then we'll fight. If you don't believe me and tell the truth, I have no other choice but to let State take over. But if it comes to that, all the battles you fought before are basically in vain. If viewed from the perspective of an uninformed third party, Chen Chen's words carry a threatening connotation. But He Bongxiong participated in the entire operation from beginning to end. So from his perspective, Chen Chen's words were actually the most sincere showdown. That's right, no one present had any choice. There is no room for bargaining or haggling. There are only two choices before everyone. Believe it or not. If you believe it, then you will go all the way and fight to the end, betting that State and Dongfeng Corps will take action to protect the results of the war that you have gained at the cost of heavy sacrifices. If you don't believe it, then let's stop here and go our separate ways. In the end, no one will get much benefit. He Bupa and He Bongxiong didn't know what the prisoner's dilemma was, and it was even more impossible for them to know how to calculate expected returns and find Nash equilibrium. However, almost everyone who has reached this point is a smart person, and unless there are major problems, it is basically impossible for them to make misjudgments. Therefore, after Chen Chen finished speaking, He Bongxiong expressed his opinion almost without hesitation. Brother, this is what I've been waiting for you to say. It's pointless to think about the consequences, the checks and balances, or to be hesitant and cautious at this point in the fight. Just one sentence. I believe you. You can give me this promise. That's enough. Fight. Dakali must fight. Life is a rare opportunity. I don't know what great thing you and Miss Bao want to accomplish, but I know that if you do this, I won't be a warlord anymore. Brother, I did it. I leave the command of the 756th Brigade to you. I will no longer participate in the battle. Against Dakali. No, I will definitely participate. Otherwise, you may not be able to control those veterans. I mean, I'll fight the way you say it. If there is any deviation in the execution of the order, just give me the order, and I will execute whoever needs to be executed. Good. Chen Chen slammed the table and said approvingly. That's your courage. Don't worry. After this battle, everything that belongs to you will be yours. If anyone dares to grab it, I guarantee that he will be the first one on the list of the Dongfeng Corps. That's settled then. What about the 7th Brigade? I'll fight too. Ibupa nodded calmly and replied, I don't have as many concerns as the 756th Brigade. I will definitely fight. I just have one question now. Commander Chen, how many of us are going to die? I have to be prepared and have a plan. Otherwise, I won't be sure. After hearing his words, Chen Chen pondered for a moment, and then said, how many people will die in Dakali? Actually, if you ask me, I have no idea. Urban street fighting. As soon as the term is mentioned, Anyone who knows how to fight a war will tremble in their hearts. What's even more troublesome is that we have to use 3,000 people to attack a city with a population of 150,000. You can understand the difficulty of this without me having to explain it. But the good news is that we are not fighting a war of aggression. At least the public will not stand on the side of Ho Pong Sung. But even so, it is not easy to keep the casualties between the attacking and defending sides below 2-1. That is to say, even if everyone who goes there dies, it may not be enough. Understood. Hibupa let out a heavy breath, then said, then there is no other way. We can only push forward and sweep the entire city at once. Chen Chen's eyes changed. He did not expect that Hibupa, who he thought was quite stable, and even a little too smooth, could actually understand the core truth of this combat operation. That's right, you can only push it in once. Moreover, the troops must be divided into groups to attack. These 3,000 people will be divided into countless small teams, and each team will be responsible for a combat objective. Unless necessary, they will not know the movements of other teams or the casualties of others. Only in such an environment can Chen Chen ensure that these teams always have the will to fight. This is a one-game determined all-in battle, and it is also a do-or-die fight to fill the meat grinder with flesh and blood. There can't be any fancy tactics. When the levels of both sides are not high, whoever loses men below the threshold first will collapse first. This is cruel, but kindness cannot command an army. Chen Chen replied, that's right. We can only advance once. Moreover, I will not order a retreat until all our men are wiped out during this advance. How do we ensure that the troops below obey our orders? He Bonxiong asked, what I mean is there is another very core issue. After our people go in, as long as they put down their guns and take off their equipment, they can immediately pretend to be civilians and surrender. By that time, how can we control them? Two aspects. First, we must use artillery fire and armored cover to advance to the core area of Dakali and not give them a chance to escape. Only by fighting and penetrating the 505th Brigade will they have a chance to escape. We have to take the initiative to get into the pocket and then tear it apart. Second, we need to mark our own people. Find some fuel for pig quarantine and stamp all of them in obvious places on their faces and hands. They can say this is an IFF mark. This is not easy. Bao Xiaomei shook her head and said, they are not so stupid that they would do something like this. And everyone will know that there is something wrong with the next action. There has to be a good reason, but I can't think of one. Minglang, Zen Temple. Chen Chen interrupted Bao Xiaomei and said, this is a major war. Mobilization cannot rely solely on money and spoils of war. We have to give them some value. The best thing is to have faith. Notify everyone. Before we set off, we will ask the senior monks at Minglang Zen Temple to pray and give everyone battle patterns. After the internal problems were resolved, the action against Dakali was quickly put on the agenda. As the situation in Thailand was about to change, the window of opportunity available to the coalition forces was actually extremely narrow, so Chen Chen did not waste time, but acted quickly and began to prepare for the subsequent Dakali offensive. The work of assembling and preparing the team was naturally done by the two brigade commanders themselves. Chen Chen did not intervene too much because what he had to do was to make his Dongfeng Corps, as the sharp knife, play the greatest role in the subsequent urban street fighting. This is definitely not an easy thing to do. According to Chen Chen's plan, after entering Dakali, the Dongfeng Corps will use the advantages of its vehicles to maneuver quickly throughout the urban area, assist the large force in clearing all key targets, and serve as a mobile force to receive information from all aspects and organize reinforcements and rescue for weak points in a timely manner. He had only one goal, which was to desperately look for opportunities to fight on the vast front of Dakali, to make up for the disadvantages caused by the offensive and defensive situation as much as possible, to gradually balance the scales between the two warring parties, and ultimately achieve victory. To achieve this goal, Chen Chen must first ensure that three things are done. First, try to avoid large-scale combat casualties as much as possible. He only has this one team, with a total of 29 combat personnel. On the local battlefield, these 29 people can be said to be invincible, but the problem is that in urban street fighting, the number of local battlefields is too large. If one or two fighters were to be left behind in every local battlefield, their own troops would probably be wiped out before they could advance past two streets. Therefore, his goal was to ensure that casualties did not exceed 10% throughout the entire operation. That is, the casualties were less than 3 people. Second, he must ensure the team's mobility. This is easy to understand. Only with sufficient mobility can this team move back and forth across the entire battlefield and play its due role as a spearhead. Third, he had to make sure the team killed enemies fast enough. It is an indisputable fact that they can kill quickly and maneuver quickly. So based on these 3 points, Chen Chen made a series of equipment adjustment plans. First of all, in order to ensure that there are no casualties in combat, the demand for personnel protection has increased significantly. Not to mention the light armor worn by some highly mobile personnel of the Dongfeng Corps before. Even the 4th level armor is no longer enough now. With the help of the relationship with Huamei Trading Company, he urgently purchased a batch of heavy explosion-proof shields from the north, specifically for use in attacking buildings. This explosion-proof shield can completely block the shooting of large-caliber bullets of 12.7 millimeters and below, and it also provides considerable protection against close-range blasting damage. Even if there is only one side in a building attack, it is enough to block all light firepower fired at the team in the building. The only drawback is that this thing is too heavy. One person can barely carry it, but it is impossible to carry it for a long time. Therefore, Chen Chen improved the explosion-proof shield by welding universal wheels on it. In this way, on flat ground, the vanguard in charge of the explosion-proof shield can push it forward. In addition to explosion-proof shields, more smoke bombs, more stun bombs, and more grenades are actually a form of protection. At this point, it's time for Chen Chen to reveal the foreshadowing he had previously buried with Peng Diren. He drained all the equipment of the Allied forces and asked Peng Diren to transport all the missiles he could find. Peng Diren was quite helpful. In just one day, he transported nearly 10,000 missiles to the Dongfeng Corps. These included nearly 2,000 smoke bombs of various types, more than 1,000 stun grenades, and 6,000 grenades, mainly Russian models. This certainly does not mean that the transaction between the two parties has been completed, but it can be regarded as a timely help to some extent. At the same time, after learning about the predicament of the coalition forces, Peng Diren let bygones be bygones, put aside all disputes with Hua State, opened up a trade route from Kokang to Hua State, and then to northern Shan State, and transported a batch of ammunition that was in short supply for the coalition forces to Myanmar. Of course, we cannot be too demanding in the quality of these ammunitions, as most of them are produced by homemade arsenals near Kokang. But it is better to be usable than not to be usable. In this case, Chen Chen's goal of strengthening protection has been basically achieved, and the next step is to enhance mobility. To maintain mobility, the most important thing is to ensure vehicle safety. As long as the vehicle is there, mobility is there. In addition to the two armored assault vehicles owned by the Dongfeng Corps, the 756th Brigade emptied its own assets and provided the Dongfeng Corps with two MTLB troop carriers that are common in this area. In accordance with Chen Chen's requirements, double air fence armor was welded on the assault vehicles in the simplest and crudest way to ensure the survivability of the personnel inside the assault vehicles as much as possible. At the same time, helicopters are also an important means of maneuver. In order to ensure that the helicopters can take off and land smoothly, Chen Chen requires that the opponent's air defense units be quickly destroyed after entering the field. This task is left to the private soldiers of the 756th Brigade. Finally, because Dakali has the Luaka River running through it as a boundary river, maneuvering along the river is also an important means, so the task of dealing with the Thai side was given to the Jackal. He must use his connections to get Thailand to turn a blind eye to the conflict on the Ruk River, or at least prevent Thai ships from crossing the border to intercept. Chen Chen thought this would be difficult, but he didn't expect Jackal to handle it so easily. Because in fact, during this period of time, the Myanmar-Thailand Friendship Bridge in Dakali had already been closed, and the Thai side was not willing to get involved in the matter here. At this point, the problem of mobility has been solved, and the next issue is the problem of killing speed. To solve this problem, the idea is actually very simple. More bombs, more high-caliber bullets, more machine guns. Chen Chen almost configured the number of machine guns in the Dongfeng Corps to the limit, with an average of 2 machine guns in each four-man team. Since the combat was mainly indoors in the city, he had no intention of carrying out the traditional CQB building attack. Instead, he adhered to one principle. If you can kill someone with a blast, don't use a gun. If you can penetrate something, don't enter. As long as the outer firepower points are dealt with, other subsequent large forces can slowly use grenades to complete the finishing and cleaning work. Based on this idea, a large number of incendiary bombs that had not been used in the previous fight against the Shadow Legion were finally used. At the same time, the Jackal also brought new good news to Chen Chen, that is, he got a batch of fuel air bombs. There are 22 in total. Theoretically, they can help Chen Chen capture 22 scattered city strongholds. It's perfect. At this point, Chen Chen's equipment preparation work was completed. The next thing to do is to take a few days to rest and adjust, and then when the time is right and the infighting in the 505th Brigade is over, launch a full-scale attack on Dakali. While all the preparations were in full swing, a person who was unexpected to Chen Chen arrived in Mung, or it was not unexpected, but he did not expect Xiaoyu to come at this time. This time, Xiaoyu did not notify Chen Chen again. When he returned to the villa, Xiaoyu was already sitting in the living room waiting for him. This illustrates a problem. The North's control over this place is being strengthened. For Chen Chen, this was a good thing, so he did not show any surprise but walked over naturally and said, "Come on, what else do you want to bring?" "What? You didn't bring anything?" "No, nothing." Xiaoyu spread his hands and replied, "What do you want? Do you really want Fadium Matai? The war isn't even over yet, and you're already thinking about drinking? That if you come empty-handed, you are not a guest. Don't you know the rules? We don't have 53 proof Matai, but do we have 59 proof tank?" "Nothing. Stop being so frivolous." Xiaoyu rolled her eyes at Chen Chen, patted the sofa beside her, and said, "Come and sit down." This scene reminded Chen Chen of some popular short videos he had seen on WeChat in his previous life. He twitched subconsciously, but still sat down pretending to be indifferent. "You really treat this place as your home. You asked me to come over and sit down. Next time you see me coming back, remember to stand up and greet me. Isn't that the proper way to behave?" "Hey, Commander Chen, you are different now after defeating Jingdong. Are you talking tough now?" "No, I said I could do it in 3 days, but I did it in 2 days. Just tell me if I can do it." Chen Chen's words were frivolous, but there was only a dull smile on his face. Xiaoyu shook his head and replied, "Whether it will work or not will depend on the future. Let's not talk about it that far. I came here for business this time, so don't interrupt me." As he spoke, Xiaoyu signaled the security personnel on both sides to turn on the jammers, and Chen Chen also waved his hand, asking other irrelevant personnel to stay away. The living room became quiet again. Xiaoyu looked at Chen Chen and said seriously, "I have an important suggestion for you. Based on the current situation, international public opinion, and the opinions of professional organizations, you can no longer use incendiary bombs as the main means of attack in this combat operation. You have now been exposed to everyone's eyes, and this is the most tense moment. If incendiary weapons are used on a large scale in cities without regard for the consequences, it will inevitably arouse widespread doubts and criticism. By then, not only you, but the entire Pubei and surrounding areas may be implicated. You have to consider the international impact, because now you are an armed organization that has attracted international attention. Are you kidding me? Chen Chen looked at Xiao Yu in disbelief and asked, what kind of joke is this? Can't use incendiary weapons? If I had large-yield bombs or sufficient heavy weapons, would I use something as dangerous and unpopular as incendiary weapons? Isn't it because the equipment and funds are not up to par that consumption has to be downgraded? Now you tell me that you won't let me set fire because of an illusory international influence? You might as well just say don't fight this war. Of course, Chen Chen did not mean that he would definitely set fire to Dakali, because that would not be in line with the coalition's demands. But whether I use it or not, and whether I can use it, are two completely different things. Even if I really don't need it this time, I can't agree to say, I don't need it to you. That's the bottom line. Nonsense. What if they are not allowed to use it when it is really necessary, and they are forced to sacrifice human lives? What's going on? Don't the lives of Pubei people count as lives? Is MLM good? Seeing Chen Chen's expression, Xiao Yu shook her head helplessly, and then explained, there are some things that neither you nor I have the right to choose. What you see is the fermentation of public opinion, and you think your image is biased towards the positive, but I want to tell you that the silent majority will always be the majority. That New York Times report had a much greater impact than you might think. Countless eyes are watching you, including your enemies. The reason I'm giving you this advice is actually for your consideration. We are not saying that you have to change your usual fighting style from now on, nor are we saying that we are going to force some rules on you. But for your sake, you have to think long-term and plan a way out for yourself. Do you understand? I see. Chen Chen nodded slowly and replied, I understand your good intentions, but I have something to say. I didn't want to set the fire, and if there was another choice, I wouldn't choose to set the fire. Every time I make a choice that you think is inappropriate, I choose between fate and rules. In order to survive, I have to break the rules. But Xiao Yu wanted to interrupt Chen Chen, but Chen Chen raised his hand and continued. That's enough. There is no room for negotiation on this matter. Even if you tell me that if I don't listen to your advice this time, we won't cooperate in the future, my answer to you will be the same. That is, I have no other choice, so I have to choose this. Okay, no more words. If you want to stay here for a few more days, your bed is right there. If you think there is no point, I'll take you back. I welcome you at any time, but Having said this, Chen Chen paused involuntarily. Xiao Yu finally found an opportunity and interrupted. I'll give you another choice. We have a batch of antiques that are very valuable. If you need them, they could be delivered within 2 days. What? Chen Chen's heart moved. Old antique? Could it really be 59? His expression suddenly changed, and he looked at Xiao Yu expectantly. The latter looked at Chen Chen silently for several seconds before answering. RD4. RD4? What is that? I've never heard of it. Chen Chen was greatly disappointed, but suddenly, a series of memory fragments flashed through his mind. That was the scene of the TMC-65U smoke generator puffing out clouds of smoke on a certain battlefield. Wait, RD4. Isn't it the thing the Russians used before they were equipped with a new generation of smoke-generating equipment? The one used on the Russian TDA-3 smoke generator is an improved version of the RD4 device. It was a large smoke-generating device invented during World War II. It was based on the principle of thermal reaction smoke generation and could be directly mounted on a variety of vehicles for use. The smoke produced by an RD4 smoke generator can cover a radius of nearly 1 kilometer and last for several hours. And the most important thing is that this thing is the simplest diesel smoke device, so simple that as long as you keep refueling, smoke will continue to be produced. The most important thing is that the smoke it produces does not have the anti-infrared function of modern aerosol smoke-generating vehicles and will not block the use of thermal imaging equipment. The most crucial part is here. In terms of the number of thermal imaging equipment, the coalition forces crushed the 505th Brigade. No matter whether it was the batch that Chen Chen imported before or the one seized before. At the very least, the coalition forces can ensure that each 20-man team has at least one passive thermal imager and one active thermal imager. But the 505th Brigade definitely cannot do that. Damn, it's tailor-made. This thing is much better than setting fire. Not only does it not require too complicated tactics, it also won't hinder your own actions. I told you, the Yankees wouldn't be so unreasonable. Chen Chen's face immediately put on a smile again. He moved closer to Xiao Yu and said, "Oh, I knew you wouldn't come empty-handed. Did I scare you just now? It's okay, buddy. I'm just joking with you. By the way, how many RD4S do we have in total? Can they be shipped today?" The RD4 that Xiao Yu promised was delivered very quickly. To be honest, this thing is something that requires very little technical skills. If Chen Chen wants to rub it, he can make it by hand after spending some time. But if we talk about the simple and crude effect and the unique stability on the battlefield, how many equipment in the world can compare with the equipment of the Russians at the end of World War II? This thing highlights a large amount of fullness, and there is no risk at all, because it's really antique. It was so old-fashioned that Chen Chen couldn't even guess which garbage dump Xiao Yu and the others were fished out from. But, although it is old, in the first test, the effect of this thing really made Chen Chen stunned. 2 RD4S were loaded onto a pickup truck and circled a mountain southeast of Myanmar. 10 minutes later, the mountain was gone. Chen Chen now had 8 of them. Based on this effect, the east-west length of the core area of Dakali is less than 8 kilometers, and the north-south length is only 2 to 3 kilometers. What does this mean? This means that under ideal calm wind conditions, the lights in the entire Dakali will be turned off. Of course, the actual effect is unlikely to be that good. After all, the smoke will dissipate, and the buildings will be less affected by the smoke. But the coalition forces' attack on Dakali did not really mean to rush in all at once. It must be carried out in sections. If I blow 8 RD4S at you at once, Can you withstand it? What's the point of fighting a war when you can't even see the road clearly? Just like this, we advance step by step with layers of cover and continuously create one-way smoke. I don't believe that your 505th Brigade can still hold on. Chen Chen was really satisfied with this equipment, and the choice provided by Xiaoyu did open up his mind to some extent. Yes, we said before that poison gas or poison gas bombs could not be used because the equipment and technology were not up to par. If they had to be used, they would have to be lethal poison gas. What if there is a battle scene like the one in Banglong Laufa Company in the future, and I have an RD4 in my hand, and I accidentally throw a handful of chili powder into the combustion chamber? What? You can't use poison gas bombs, but you can't also not allow the use of tear gas bombs? Open your mind. Chen Chen was so satisfied that he liked Xiaoyu more and more. How else can you say that your own people are considerate? They gave you whatever you needed, and not only equipment, but also pointed you in the right direction, implicitly filling in that little flaw. So, during the few days that Xiaoyu stayed in Mengka, Chen Chen was very obedient to her. The small and broken bed was replaced, daily necessities were bought, development suggestions were listened to, possible future business cooperation directions were discussed, and she was even allowed to participate in the ceremony of applying the battle pattern before the coalition forces set out. The exchanges between the two sides became closer, and of course, Chen Chen did leave room for himself. At least, both sides have maintained a restrained attitude when it comes to intelligence cooperation. Chen Chen originally wanted to introduce Jiang He to her, but it was obvious that the time was far from right. Standing on the rooftop of the villa, looking at the monks busy shuttling back and forth in the military camp in the distance, Xiaoyu sighed softly and then said, "You played this trick very well, but you'd better grasp the scale. If this team is really controlled by such beliefs, it will not be good news for anyone." "I see." Chen Chen nodded seriously and replied, "This is just a stopgap measure. In fact, it is just an additional measure to match our tactics." However, the soldiers in the team really fell for this trick. After all this, the original purpose was weakened. "I can see that." Xiaoyu turned his head and suddenly said thoughtfully, "To be honest, this was the first time I felt the cruelty of war firsthand. It's not the cruelty we experienced in previous battlefield adaptation training, nor is it the cruelty we felt in history education classes. It's a real cruelty. How do I put it? Feeling powerless." Chen Chen added, "Yes, it's a feeling of powerlessness." Xiaoyu sighed and continued, "Look at these soldiers below. Their ages range from teenagers to those in their 40s or 50s. Some of them have just learned how to shoot, and some can barely hold a gun anymore. But they all stand together and are heading to a battlefield with an uncertain future. Most of the people here will die, right? When you come back and get together again, it will definitely not be this relaxing atmosphere anymore. Do you think that those soldiers who were blessed by the monks would waver in their faith after surviving? Look at that young man. He is very pious. He is more pious than the people around him. Would he still be so pious if he could come back? I don't know." Chen Chen shook his head and did not answer, because he really didn't know. Dakali is a meat grinder, and the meat stuffed into it will be crushed mercilessly. Only the bones mixed in the meat can break the meat grinder. But in this team of 3,000 people, apart from the Dongfeng Corps, who else are the bones? He couldn't answer this question, so he simply didn't think about it. After seeing his expression, Xiaoyu did not ask any further questions. She just stood there in silence for a long time, and then she asked again, "Do you think you can survive?" Chen Chen was stunned by her question, and suddenly felt like he was seen through. That's right, no matter how calm he is at this moment or how well he plans, this battle is actually different from any previous one, because he was really going deep into the tiger's den. The tolerance rate is frighteningly low, and the number of uncontrollable factors is off the charts. Even with the large amount of smoke released by RD4, he could not guarantee that everything would be safe. This is urban street fighting, not to mention cold guns or cold cannons. Any stray bullet that comes from nowhere could take his life. So, he was actually really nervous. One could even say that there was some panic. As far as I can remember, the last time I felt this panic was in my previous life, when I was covering for an injured teammate. That time, he couldn't run or hide. The enemy's footsteps were going up the stairs one level at a time. All he could do was to beat back every enemy that showed up as quickly as possible. He would never forget the feeling of his heart beating wildly and uncontrollably. Now, the situation is actually similar. My heart doesn't beat so fast anymore, but the feeling of depression is the same. Thinking of this, Chen Chen sighed and then said, "How the hell do I know if I can survive? But the chances of dying here are low. Don't set promises for me here, like I'll tell you my name if you come back alive, or I'll go on a date with you at the beach this time, or I'll cook dinner and wait for you at home, etc. Don't tell me that. Oh, and don't even mention new equipment if you come back alive, new helicopters if you win the battle, or a big order if you take Tachalike. Although I am a staunch materialist fighter, if you are unlucky, you'd better not mention it." Hearing this, Xiaoyu couldn't help but roll his eyes. She began to ask, "Do I look like someone who would say something like that?" "Then why are you asking me? I just wanted to give you some advice on how to stay alive. You have no idea what you are suggesting." Chen Chen snorted disdainfully, while Xiaoyu straightened his expression and said seriously, "In Tachalike, I have a safe house, my own, personal safe house. Tien Go grocery store. It's located near the Dahua Auditorium in the city center. If you can't defeat them this time, and you can't escape, you can use this safe house. The basement of the safe house is connected to the sewage system of the central area of Tachalike. You can hide in it for a few days. When the time comes, I'll rescue you." Hearing her words, Chen Chen couldn't help but be stunned. But then he shook his head and replied, "It won't be that complicated. Although street fighting is dangerous, it is much easier for me to fight than positional warfare. It's nothing more than killing one you see. It is actually impossible to mobilize a large team of 3,000 people without being discovered. There was no need for any complex or advanced reconnaissance methods. A large number of military vehicles suddenly appeared on the only main road. Even a fool would know what these people were going to do. In a modern communications environment, such movements would not only be leaked, but could even be broadcast live. Therefore, Chen Chen did not have any hope for confidentiality from the beginning. He simply modified and concealed the key vehicles that pretended to be RD-4 smoke generators to ensure that they would not be quickly identified and destroyed. As for the possible attacks during the troop movement, he did not worry too much about it. The reason was simple. At that time, the 505th Brigade had been dragged to death in Dakali by the rebels of the 4th Regiment. It should not, and had no ability, to leave Dakali and launch any external attack. Of course, in order to prevent Zhao Jiaoyang from setting up some ambushes that he was not aware of, Chen Chen still managed the coalition forces strictly in accordance with the process of large-scale troop transfer and maneuver, completed the mobilization in batches and in an organized manner, and arranged sentry posts to stabilize the logistics line from Jingdong to Dakali. This logistics line is quite fragile, and Chen Chen never expected it to really play a big role. After all, the coalition forces' attack on Dakali is a one-time deal. If they can take it down, they will attack. If they can't, they will have no choice but to show their cards and let Hua State take over. The team of 3,000 people quickly arrived at Mayin village on the north side of Dakali and recamped here to establish the starting position. Looking at the traces of past battles, the veterans who followed Chen Chen in launching the rocket attack on Dakali were filled with mixed emotions. In their view, that action was an unprecedented miracle. Without sacrificing a single soldier, they actually defeated and shattered an entire enemy regiment-level force. Is there still a way to fight a war like this? If it worked last time, it should work this time too, right? The atmosphere during the camping process was quite relaxed. The veterans pointed to the traces on the ground and the few remaining launchers and told the new recruits, this was our rocket launcher position at the time. The new recruits, with envy on their faces, cleaned up the position and set up new rocket launchers. This time, they are fighting in urban street battles, so rockets that lack accuracy are no longer their main equipment. Instead, they are used to deal with sneak attacks that the enemy may organize to the rear, so it is still appropriate to deploy them in the original position. You didn't see the scene at that time. The rockets were raining down. I mean, it was really raining, thick and nonstop. I was responsible for moving the shells. I was so tired that my hands cramped, and then Lao Chi came to take over for me. Lao Chi, how many shells did we move in total? There must be more than 100 rounds, right? Yes, at least more than 100. That's a tiring job. It takes 8 people to load a launcher, but only 2 people to carry it. It's really exhausting, but the effect was really good. From beginning to end, the 505th Brigade did not resist at all. Hey, this time it's different. This time we really have to get in. It's not that easy. That may not be the case. Didn't Commander Chun bring some new equipment this time? That's right. By the way, you new recruits should also learn how to use thermal imagers. If we fail, you will have to take over and use them. 7th brother, you come and teach them, and check if they know how to use gas masks. Okay, come here. Chen Chen patrolled the entire camp, listening to the slightly chaotic conversations around him. Basically, wherever he walked by, someone would stand at attention and salute him. This was not because everyone knew him, but because the uniforms of the Dongfeng Corps were very recognizable, with 4-eye night vision goggles plus gas masks, and bulletproof vests as thick as medieval knights, plus the eye-catching flame marks on their masks and helmets. At a glance, you could tell who this team belonged to and what they were doing. Everyone knew that this elite force, which was supposed to sit quietly in the rear and be commanded, would be the first to lead the charge and attack the outpost. Therefore, most soldiers still had a certain amount of admiration for this corps. Nonsense. They could have let you be cannon fodder without any worries, but they willingly took over the most difficult and dangerous job, leaving you rookies behind to clean up the battlefield and reap the credit. Isn't it worthy of you calling them big brother? People are selfish most of the time, but most of the time, they have a clear distinction between love and hate. Therefore, the authority of the Dongfeng Corps has been greatly enhanced within the coalition forces, and this enhancement of authority will undoubtedly be beneficial to subsequent operations. After looking around the entire camp and checking He Bangxiong and He Bupa's combat deployment, Chen Chen felt a little relieved. Although it is Pubei's warlord cuisine, it is Pubei, after all, a piece of the East Asian monster house. Birds of a feather flock together. No matter how inexperienced they were, they could still learn a lot of basic things by observing and listening to others. Both He Bupa and He Bangxiong did a good job in tactical arrangements, task allocation, and offensive rounds. The several key targets requested by Chen Chen have been given special attention, and the number of troops deployed is also extremely sufficient. There are no magic tricks, only mature tactics that are followed step by step and in an orderly manner. Chen Chen was very satisfied with this arrangement, because this is what the troops who are always filling the line should really do. So he refocused his attention on his Dongfeng Corps. To open a breakthrough, this spearhead force consisting of only 29 people is the focus of the focus. Inside the temporary command center, Chen Chen confirmed the adaptability of various equipment for the last time. After receiving the feedback that everything is normal, he immediately began the pre-war briefing and deployed combat tasks. The preliminary drone reconnaissance has been completed, and the important firepower points in Dakali City have been marked. The raid on these firepower points is the combat mission of the Dongfeng Corps. Our combat objectives this time are divided into 3 phases. The first stage is to open up the road. The second stage is to clear the key points. The third stage is to finish off the enemy and behead them. First of all, in the first phase, Zhao Jiaoyang set up 6 key checkpoints on the main routes into Dakali. 3 of them are located along the Dakali Highway in the north, 2 are located in the farmland near the Wang family courtyard in the east, and 1 is near the Dawn Sanatorium. These 6 checkpoints basically control all the main routes into the city. If we don't take them down in advance, it will be difficult for our large forces to advance quickly and deploy quickly. Once the speed of entering the city is reduced, we will have to face an extremely disadvantageous situation where we have no cover to fight against those with cover, and light firepower to fight against heavy firepower. The entire offensive operation will inevitably fail, and the morale and organization of the army will also suffer a major blow. So, what we have to do is very simple. That is, while the large force launches the attack and maneuvers, we must first destroy the first key choke point, which is checkpoint number 1. The time is the time it takes for the large force to start from the front line position and reach the edge of the city and the range of fire of the Dakali defenders. Based on the vehicle's maneuvering speed, we have a total of 0.6 minutes. Within 6 minutes, we have to destroy the stronghold across the Tachalike Stadium. This means that we cannot take care of other levels and must rely on the support of long-range firepower. The good news is that we still have nearly 80 rounds of ammunition for our heavy artillery. Then, the attacks on the eastern and western checkpoints will mainly be carried out with heavy artillery. After the attack is completed, Baoqi, you must quickly adjust the artillery's attack targets, use the artillery extension tactics, and then launch another wave of attacks on the last 2 checkpoints on the north side. The 2 checkpoints in this section are hidden in the urban area. The effect of artillery fire will not be very good. Our main goal is to create a psychological deterrent for the enemy. The real cleanup still needs to be completed by ground troops. 3 vehicles equipped with automatic howitzers must use up all their ammunition on this route to quickly suppress the enemy, occupy the enemy's position, control the main traffic routes, and hold out until the main force arrives. Afterwards, after the main force took over the defense, we used the last of the 3 checkpoints, the Beitong Hotel, as the assembly point, established a fire line starting position here, and carried out the second phase of the cleanup support operation with this as the center. Is the mission clear? Clear. Everyone answered at the same time. Chen Chen nodded with satisfaction, and then continued. All the above actions were carried out under the premise of smoke cover. Old Pig, your mission is to dispatch the smoke-generating vehicle and protect the 2 smoke-generating assault vehicles that are following us. No matter what happens, it is a reasonable choice even if you dispatch armored vehicles to block bullets for smoke assault vehicles. Remember, the smoke truck is the first priority for protection, understand? Clear. Lao Zhu answered quickly. He was a little nervous at this moment. After all, this was his first time to participate in a foreign combat operation after he officially joined the Dongfeng Corps. What he didn't expect was that the first combat was on such a large scale and in such a grand scene. He was actually quite confident in his abilities, but for some reason he always felt like a rookie in front of his new superior. After getting Lao Zhu's answer, Chen Chen did not confirm it again and again. Trust the people you employ, and don't employ those you don't trust. No matter what he can accomplish, that's him. After a brief pause, Chen Chen continued to issue orders to Cheng Lei. Firebird, your mission this time is very simple. Just cooperate with us to maneuver at various points in the city. According to previous reconnaissance intelligence, the city still has considerable anti-aircraft firepower, especially individual anti-aircraft firepower. And we will likely have to conduct multiple airdrops, which is very risky. I give you the greatest decision-making power. You choose the landing location. You must ensure maximum safety for me. Understood. I promise to complete the task. Cheng Lei answered calmly and firmly, his eyes even filled with some unspeakable expectation. This was probably the tough battle he had been looking forward to for most of his life, and today it finally came. Chen Chen glanced at the battle map and continued with a more detailed briefing. After everything was arranged, it was already bright. The attack will begin in 2 hours. That's right, not a night battle. The reason is simple. The light and heat sources inside the city are too complex. Without a citywide power outage, the coalition forces' infrared advantage is difficult to bring into play. Instead of doing this, it would be better to launch the attack during the day and use the smoke to maximize the advantage. Chen Chen took a deep breath, glanced at everyone, and said, "Get ready to go to the battlefield. Number 1, command the artillery unit to launch an artillery attack on the previously determined target and eliminate the enemy's firing points. Everyone else, quickly get ready to go." At the same time, in the city of Dakali, Zhao Jiaoyang has moved to a safer fortress, and next to him at this time is the commander of the 3rd Regiment of the 505th Brigade and his last confidant, Zhao Yuming. The 3,000 men of the coalition forces have already arrived. It is obvious that they are planning to engage in a siege battle with us. In terms of military strength, they still have the advantage, but now that we have retreated into the city, it will not be so easy for them to take us down. 3,000 people against 2,000 people, and it's still a street fight. I'm really surprised they could think of it. But it's true. Our geographical location is too special. We can't conduct siege warfare like Jingdong did. Fighting hard is our only option. As Zhao Yuming spoke, he handed the updated battle map to Zhao Jiaoyang. Zhao Jiaoyang nodded slightly, and after taking a closer look, he said doubtfully, "I really don't understand what they're trying to do. There is only one starting position, which means that all their teams have to start from the same direction. This is too reckless. It's totally different from their previous tactical level." Really? Zhao Yuming scratched his head subconsciously, then said, "Maybe it's because there are too many people and the organization can't keep up." Their previous style of play was actually quite opportunistic and did not really bring out the effect of tactical command. Now that there are more and more people, the command can't keep up. It's reasonable to have loopholes, right? Reasonable, but irrational. Zhao Jiaoyang shook his head and remained silent. At this time, bursts of explosions were heard outside the window. It was the coalition forces' artillery bombardment of the city. Both people in the fortress knew that this was a signal that the other side was about to launch an attack. But what good would it do if it was just one round of bombardment? They couldn't get in no matter what. Yes, your indirect bombardment capability is very strong. You should bomb all the main positions I have arranged. But my people are not fools. Can't they dodge when the shells come? The bombardment will eventually end, right? In urban street fighting, heavy firepower is of little use, unless you have unlimited heavy firepower. But how could you possibly have that? In the final analysis, it's still a clash of people. Zhao Jiaoyang shook his head, turned around and continued to look at the battle map, preparing to make a round of deployment adjustments after the shelling. But at this moment, the door of the command post was suddenly knocked violently, and then the intelligence officer's panicked face appeared in front of Zhao Jiaoyang. Sir, smoke. Such a huge smoke. Zhao Jiaoyang's heart skipped a beat, but then calmed down. This is a classic tactic of the Dongfeng Corps, and it is not surprising. So he began to rebuke. Why are you panicking? They always set off smoke screens before a war. What's there to be afraid of? Hide it and wait for the smoke to clear. No, sir. It won't disperse. There's a lot of smoke. You come and see. This time, Zhao Jiaoyang really realized that something was wrong. He followed the intelligence officer out of the command post, and what he saw made him freeze in place. What a lot of smoke. It wasn't even smoke anymore. It was a wall of clouds that covered the sky and the sun. The milky white wall of clouds was slowly advancing, swallowing up everything. And in that fog, there is an infinite murderous intent hidden.